Good evening and welcome to the Canby Urban Renewal Agency Workshop and Community Input Session of August 7th, 2019, convening at 5:35 p.m. And since this is just a work session, we'll hand off to our URA Administrator, Rick Robinson.
Yes, and I would like to introduce our representatives from Scott Edwards Architecture, Blythe and Brian. They're going to walk us through a presentation, show you what we have been working on for the last several months. They're going to provide you some opportunities to provide input and feedback, and hopefully we'll have a good next step forward direction at the conclusion of today's meeting.
Am I good?
You're good.
Good. First of all, thank you guys for having us here. We're excited. I recognize some of your faces, so I appreciate it. Sorry we're late. I-5 was terrible coming down from Portland. This will be very, pretty brief, pretty easy. If you guys have questions along the way, just let us know. And I'm told that you guys can see my pointer if I do things like this. Oh, there we go. Okay, good. So we'll get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk you through from the very beginning phone call that we've had from Rick and Amanda and how we started the project, and then we're going to funnel down to a few design options that you'll see at the end of the presentation, and then we want your feedback on these two design options. And then we also have some wording and taglines that we want to talk about. So when we got the call from Rick and Amanda, the goal was, how do we create a gateway into Canby? And the idea was this archway over Grant Street. So what we started with was the Highway 99 Gateway Master Plan, which you guys are all probably familiar with, I'm sure. And in that master plan, it kind of denoted 3 different entry points into the downtown area. Well, I guess actually 4. So we're focusing obviously today on Grant Street, which you guys know your town, but here's 99. And then you've got Grant Street, you've got the railway crossing, right? And then the work that you guys did on kind of the northwest First Street promenade, we're going to be talking about these 2 pads here and the archway over the street, which I understand now there's a Sitka spruce in these 2 pads, right?
One in the middle of each one, yes.
In the middle of each one. So the idea is we'll keep those, but we're going to arch over that, and we're working with some other groups on how that will not impede any of the railway signage and crossing. So in our first meeting with Rick and Amanda, we asked them, what do you want out of that? What do you want out of this archway? What's the program? So let's talk about that just for a minute, and then we'll go through that in detail. So the requests were, let's start with an iconic threshold into the downtown city of Canby. Number 2, tie into the existing signage of Canby and the existing character. Have it be an actual armature for event signage, right? Banners and such, possibly holiday lighting. Let's activate it, right, with that whole kind of parkway that you guys have along First Street. And then also, can we do a historical plaque? And we can talk about whatever we want to do on that historical plaque, but let's make it some sort of monument for you guys. So, threshold into downtown. You guys know this view very, very well, and you'll see this view again as we kind of superimpose some of our design options onto it. Signage. So we did some walking around. Some of these are photos that we actually used with the library, but some of the elements that we really found were, you've got the dahlia, the garden spot. You've got these really pretty amazing street lights that we wanted to play off of, and also some existing kind of masonry structure work that I think is really good to build off of. Okay? So as we go through this, you'll see our design work kind of tie back to some of these things. Now, armature for event signage. We see it all over. We've got it in Portland, but you can use an archway to really highlight some of the major events that you have in town. So we have the Wild Hare Country Fest, Light Up the Night, Big Night Out, Independence Day, annual Dowell Festival. Now, this archway will be rigged in a way that we can put whatever banner up at any point in time. And the way that we're thinking about it is that these banners, you can lie them on the ground. All of the mechanics would hook up to it on the ground and you reel it up, lock it in place so you're not closing down Grant Street. Pretty simple. If I'm going too fast, let me know. I'm just going to buzz through a lot of this. So then the other thing that we talked about is, can we actually put display lighting on the archway? So like during different seasons, maybe those lights change colors. Christmas, you can have Christmas colors, etc. I think possibly Blythe and I added the integrated seating. I don't know if that's true or not, but we really think that you want to activate that area to get people to use it, so it's not just a static monument. So how are ways that you can do that? Do you plumb it with water and have a drinking fountain? Do you put benches on it? Point of discussion. And then obviously the historic plaques. Great opportunity to put something about Canby, something about when this happened, and we have different places that will show you that you can actually put that historic signage on. So there's opportunity to do put multiple messages, if you will. Okay, so now we're going to get into the fun stuff. So after the first meeting where we talked about what it is that you guys want out of this archway, we came back down a few weeks later with just a bunch of precedent ideas and sketches of how this thing could look. And we're only going to show you a few of them that actually Rick and Amanda kind of boiled down to things that they really liked and that fed into the design work that we're going to show you. So here we've got a gateway at the Lettison Winery in Kenwood, California. So you have this very organic Victorian gateway that really shows a sense of place. You can see they've got street lighting on the top of this, very natural sort of brick colonnades, and pretty fantastic ironwork for the gate. And I think this was one of the favorites of probably the 10 precedent studies that we brought down. You guys probably know this one. This is a very iconic sort of modern archway in California. We really started liking it, because it started having this trestle work over the top that kind of started reminding us of the railway trestles, the trestle bridges, things like that. And it also integrated lighting. So this was another favorite. Don't know which one was the favorite, but one of the favorites. So then we took it a little bit further and we said, okay, what's a little bit different? What's a form that you probably don't see as often in an archway in a community? And we took this sort of very circular archway that actually has this city medallion at the top as another idea, with some very nice brickwork on the sides and historic plaques. That one is in New Haven, Connecticut. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's on Worcester Street.
Worcester Street. So the other thing that whenever I think about Canby, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, but I always think of the railway, good or bad. It has such a connection to what is actually going on here. So we really like the idea of that train trestle, that bridgeway. So this was an image that spoke to us as a precedent for the design work. So, showed the precedents, we culled it down, and we came back later with sketches of what we could actually do, perspectives with the city of Canby and Grant Street in the background. So idea number one was kind of hearkening off of that sort of very elongated organic arch, right? And taking these very large brick colonnades on each side of the street, integrating street lighting, and that train trestle idea over the top, with whichever signage we really want to do, and we'll talk about that in a minute, with the possibility of doing some sort of dahlia adornments as well. So that was idea number one. Idea number two is very close to that Ensenadas idea, right? A flatter, more modern look to a train trestle across Grant Street with very prominent brick colonnades on each side. And the idea you can see in this sketch where you start integrating sort of benches for the public to actually interact with the archway. And obviously this stuff doesn't talk about the lighting and everything that we could or could not do, but it talks about the Canby and the garden spot or whatever sort of verbiage we want to put on the arch. Continuing on. Or we do something very, very simple, something lower, something that you very much see as you turn off of 99. It's right there, and it's flatter. Still have the integrated benches, the nice sort of masonry colonnades with lights on top, and the signage. That's idea number three. So, what we have now and what we'd like to get everybody's feedback on is the designs that we as kind of a design group and a project group have culled everything down to. We brought two options, and then we also have some wording options that I'd like to really go through and have a discussion about. And I'd like to just kind of walk through these really quickly, and then we can open it up for discussion, if that works. So option one, and we're going to look at it in plan first, okay? This is, as we talked about, the existing pad sites with the spruce, right? You've got Grant Street going this way and First Street, 99, and the railway is down here. So we would be coming inboard of those pad sites, and you still have a very nice sort of generous sidewalk flowing through here and underneath, okay? And then the archway with the signage. So from a rendering perspective, you guys are kind of seeing that thread, right? From precedent study to sketches now to kind of a more built form, where we actually put in the fences in the foreground that you have. You've got these massive masonry sort of colonnades with lights built in, and then a pretty beautiful proportioned arch all the way over Grant Street. With, obviously, you can see kind of your event signage. And a really cool truck, I might add.
So with this option, the idea with the signage was that your main line, whatever it is, whatever we determine, is front and center, right in the middle. And then there's a bit of asymmetry where a tagline could go off to the side. We have Oregon's Garden Spot, but again, those are all just a stab. So keep that in mind as you look at the next one, because that's a difference between the two of them. But you can see also with this version how the form of the two kind of piers that support the big archway ties into the existing language of the smaller pylon that's at the edge of the fencing, which again really just speaks to the language of your sign monuments throughout the town of Canby. So you're sort of taking that existing language and turning it into a more monumental form, but it still feels integrated. And the lamps would be from the same manufacturer as your existing street lights. So again, it feels that there's that consistency and that common thread.
Yeah, and there's so many different options for how we highlight Canby.
Yeah.
Right? And that maybe as a work session as we go through the design process, we really work through that. But there's a bunch of different ways of doing that.
And you can see, it's a little hard to see on that screen, but at the base of each of those piers, there is a wood bench that wraps all the way around all four sides of the pier. that again is inspired by more of an industrial railroad language, so it might have steel bracket supports on it. But it would be on all four sides, so you could sit and sort of hang out in that spot.
Yep.
So, at its height there, where it says Canby, how tall?
Here.
So there's a required minimum vertical clearance off the roadway and it has to be to the bottom of that wild hair sign, whatever's dangling over the
Just this guy.
the street, which is 16 feet. So it's an extra, maybe that's 22 feet. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How are you going to keep people from climbing this one?
It's a great
It's a very
question.
good question.
How are you going to keep people from climbing this particular one?
It's a great question.
Okay,
Good question from an attorney too.
thanks.
Amanda did.
But these are just options that we came up with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's a great question.
yeah,
And all of that stuff, guys, solvable.
right.
You know, maybe we change the proportion of some of these things, but we would work through that as we went into kind of our design development. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, right.
Hopefully not that.
Right. You might want to ask the attorney about
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really good, and we can switch back and forth, but I think this is a really good and interesting contrast to what we're going to show you next. So again, start in site plan, really the same concept. This particular one has a little bit smaller footprint on the sidewalk, as you'll see in the rendering. As you go into this is kind of more that sort of modern-ish Ensenadas look, with the very, very strong brick colonnades, and a flatter archway. Nobody can climb on this one unless they go up the brick.
They'd have to do some scaling.
But again, a pretty heavy pedestal for people to really interact with it.
And the idea on this one is that the lower third of each of those two piers ties into the masonry that you have elsewhere in the Canby sign monuments. And then above that level, it goes to a more refined brick facade.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, sort of like that classical Italianate system where you have the most rustic piece on the base and then it gets more refined as you go up.
And for those of you who are very technically focused, we have had the geotechnical engineers out to do the soils analyses and to make sure that this is all doable and that we can get it in the ground and that it would be stable and supported for generations to come. We've also completed the survey so that we know what we're working with.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, that's really the design options that we wanted to show you guys. Unless you have anything to add, I was gonna.
I could keep going, but we can just start discussing.
Okay.
That's fine.
So, taglines. So we roughly kind of mocked up a few things that we can go back and forth, but I wanted to read through these really quickly, and then we can kind of go back and forth to the renderings if we want. But the yellow piece, I don't know how to go back on this guy, so I'm going to try some. Ooh,
There you
look at
go.
that. So the yellow parts of this is the main portion of the archway, okay? The gray part is potentially some additive that we could do somewhere else, right? So you kind of have a hierarchy of branding, if you will, that we could do. So talked about welcome to Canby, the garden spot. Welcome to Canby, the garden spot of Oregon. Welcome to Canby, come grow with us. Or simplify it, Canby, the garden spot. Canby, the garden spot of Oregon, or Canby, come grow with us. And there's a million different ways that we can do some of this wording, but we thought it might just be kind of fun to to get some feedback, not only on the design work, but also the taglines. So that's it. That's really what we came to talk to you guys about.
And we have turned around, we've got the boards that'll show the main theme plus the tagline and the two concept ideas and what we would like, depending on how many questions you have before, but we would like is for you to go up and identify the elements of each of these that you like. If there's some things that you don't like about them, then we'd like to know that as well. And then that'll give us what the additional information that we need to go to the next level, which is a final design, final engineering, and be able to actually put the product together and bring it to you as a final design concept.
Yeah, and we have Post-it notes if you guys want. I can hand them out. We've handed them out to the crowd. But we could start off with questions if you want to do that.
I guess my only question would be, sorry, I'm going to turn that on. My personal preference, the aesthetics of the first one is the one that really caught me. I like that one the best, but the safety question is a concern. So what could be done to make that one less appealing to climbers, but still keep that same look?
I think we have to start in looking at that. We've shared this conversation probably on 2 or 3 different occasions. You're going to have to start with a little more elevation on the edges and a little bit less slope on the lower end, lower portion of that arch. And that you can get it up to about 8 feet, maybe 9 feet, maybe 10 feet even, and still be able to create what you want to create. And it won't hurt to have a slightly more elevated center, because that'll give us more room to hang our banners. And we're looking at the possibility of 2-foot banners, but as you start looking at other ways that you could work with the design concepts, I mean, you could go to 4-foot banners and be 18 feet in the air. I mean, there's a lot of options. Or actually be 20 feet in the air, because you have to have 16 feet underneath. We're pretty confident that after conversations with our engineers in the quiet zone and with UP Railroad, that as we move completely out of the eyesight path, I don't know what you call it, but the sight line of people driving in and out, so we don't believe that there's any question or any problem about visibility that is going to impede in any way our efforts to complete the quiet zone, and at the same time we'll be able to move this forward. But we really like the idea of anything that we do needs to be able to handle banners, and we can go up as much as we need to on the side pillars in order to accomplish what the safety factors that we want to build into it.
Yeah.
I think my favorite version is if you merge the two together.
Oh, interesting. In what way?
I like these pillars and the middle.
And the other arch.
More modest
Yeah,
or
the more modern part. So if you kind of merge those two together, and then I think in my eyes that's kind of a win. Going to the question about the taglines, in my mind I'm thinking super simple, and I don't know that we necessarily need to have a tagline on there. I think if we just say welcome to Canby, it's perfect, especially if we're going to be putting banners and event stuff on there. I would think that, if we have, the name welcome to Canby and a tagline and then a banner and some decoration and some lights, eventually it's going to
It's
get
too busy.
too much. That is too distracting as people are driving through.
I'm going to go back to one of the precedents, if I could. And partly I'm doing this for Commissioner Spoon so you can see the presentation and fast forward.
Sorry.
But I like the simpleness of this.
Yeah.
Quite a lot.
Yeah.
And if you think about this with just kind of a banner underneath, that's very, very elegant. And you're not going to, there's not any, I'm going to use the word tchotchkes that you're going to get tired of over time, right?
Yeah.
Like we showed in one of the sketches. So that's a very good thought.
And that one does start higher as well, so it
Yeah.
helps to address the
Yeah.
other issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm not a fan of the pillars on the second one. I'm with Sean, I like the.
Yeah, I
than the
think,
first
yeah,
one better.
changing it, I really loved how, you guys did a fantastic job. I love how those first pillars just match the pillars we already have.
And the chunkiness of them?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're?
Well, that natural flat stone has more of a northwest vibe, which is more Canby than an Italianate
I see.
Right.
taste.
I see.
And I think it's more timeless.
Yeah. Okay.
I know I wasn't here for the whole presentation, but I'm going to echo Sean's thoughts about a tagline or whatever. Also, I think that a community's identities and priorities can change over time, and I'd hate to lock us into something that might evolve or, there's some permanence
I mean,
to
the
it.
garden
Yeah.
spot could be a banner during the farmer's market
Yeah.
or something. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be
not a
permanent
tagline
fixture
fan.
Yeah.
on the arch.
Yeah.
Okay. Good thoughts.
Because it always says the garden spot on the entryways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's either end of
Yeah,
town.
I think we're
It
covered.
This,
And the
sorry,
one with the dahlia,
I'm gonna
right?
need you guys
Yeah.
to
Oops.
designate
There it is.
Yeah.
right here, right?
Yeah, we're already identifying it as the garden spot
Yeah.
there. I think we need to be
Right.
redundant.
The chunkier rock does coincide better.
Also, I think since it's an archway into downtown, if it says the garden spot, people will be like, where's the garden? We don't have a downtown garden? Like our gardens are like in the area. So,
True.
I have a quick clarification that might help our architect team. When you're asking or making the comment about welcome to Canby, are you talking about that as a tagline on the side, or you just want the whole thing across the top to say welcome to Canby?
In my mind, it would just be in one spot.
Just
you
the
know,
arch
just
to
across
welcome to
in the
Canby.
middle of the arch,
And no
one spot,
tagline.
Right there.
Yeah, the way I see it when you say that is welcome to is small
Yeah.
Yeah,
on the top.
Canby should
and
have the
Canby
emphasis.
fits in that same square, right, as a bigger element.
yeah. And even if it doesn't say welcome, if it just says Canby, kind of going back to the whole railroad.
I just like the
Kind of
symbol.
going back to the railroad idea,
Yeah.
when you go to a rail station,
It's
it
the
just shows the
destination
city
mark.
name. So,
Yeah.
even if it just said Canby, literally to me, that's the simplicity of that with those other arches, I think is a perfect arch.
So do you think
I
we're
don't like
heading
that.
in the right direction
Yeah.
with this?
With the pillars from the
With-
first
yeah.
design and
The pillars from the
arch
first, yeah,
second,
arch
yes.
from the second, simple.
Is there anything else that you'd like to see that we haven't really, that you may have seen in another setting that grabbed your attention that you'd want to see
We talked-
superimposed? Any other options that maybe we haven't considered that resonate with you?
I think it's probably hard to show in here, but you kind of talked about lighting, and, one of the
Oh, yeah,
visions I have
lighting
is.
high on our priority.
Yeah, and one of the visions I kind of have is if you've driven through Woodburn at night and you see that bridge that goes over the freeway that you can light up in all different colors, I think that's,
Yeah.
to be able to light the arch up for different events and stuff would be.
Yeah, I don't know how well you guys know Portland, but the Morrison Bridge.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Those pillars, I just found out that you can actually rent those pillar lights and change it to whatever color you want for a little bit of cash. But those change with the seasons as well.
Right.
In that same way. So do you guys, when you think about lighting, there's a million different ways that you could do this, but my personal preference, and it really depends on where we go with the design, but you're lighting up these pillars for sure, in my mind's eye. And then maybe you have something very simple kind of around your Canby signage in something like this.
No, I think there's a lot to be said for lighting up the trestle.
The actual arch,
Yeah.
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 Especially if you
Because-
have those lights on, those, what do you call those, the lanterns or whatever on
Yeah.
there. For different events, we could put different bulbs in there,
Yeah.
that we could change color on.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily know that we need to light up the pillars themselves, but I think lighting up the actual arch would be
So you're
incredible.
saying this whole guy and then maybe some fun stuff in these
Yeah,
guys on top?
we could load those with LEDs.
Oh,
so
but
we
those
could
won't be
change
on
colors.
top.
Yeah, go back to
They'll
the
be on
first
the
one.
Yeah.
Sure. Very good
There you
point.
go.
Yeah, which is
Well, how do you
actually
guys think
probably more
about that?
noticeable.
Well, I think indirect lighting from the ground of the pillars would be really
Yeah.
classy.
I'd be really elegant.
It
Just
would
kind
be
of keep them
beautiful.
Yeah,
like
just-
white at all times or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, you
just
could
the
change
natural.
those as well. I mean, there
Sure.
would be times you'd probably want to change them.
Yeah.
Fourth
What
of
about-
July, you want something really vivid.
What it'll do if you do it at the base is really show the texture of that
Yeah.
stone.
Yeah.
It's be pretty
That's
darn
true.
cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Really cool.
And then when it's not a seasonal holiday, you're getting those two pieces really lit up at night, which
Yeah.
will keep their presence more than I think lighting up the truss.
We are putting lights on the pillars, so I agree with you.
Well, I just said that, I thought it looked, I like these pillars, I agree with everyone else, but I like the lanterns on the top.
Good
It
lanterns
looks
on
more
top of
complete.
these.
Yeah.
It looks more complete to me, it feels like
Yeah.
a finished.
I agree.
And if you're going to light the pillars with indirect lighting, you probably don't want to have the
Yeah, you
lantern
don't
on
need
the face.
the side lights so much.
So could you
Yeah.
put the lanterns on the top of, instead on the front of the
Yeah,
first
I
set?
actually think I'd recommend that.
Yeah.
Well, and then in that spot where you have those two
Yeah.
lanterns, that's a good spot to put any other plaques that we
right.
talked about.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and we really wanted to take advantage of the space by identifying some significantly historic event or site in our community that, because we have up to 8 different, 4 sides on each side, so we have 8 different physical locations, and we could really highlight, and they'd be changeable.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that one of those 8 will have all of your names on it as a dedication plaque, so you have 7 left, and then you go from there.
I think one that says Rick.
Now we're talking.
I think,
Whatever.
think about it,
Dedication
this has been a
plaques.
concept that you've had for 20 years, and you're finally, this group of people is pulling the trigger and making it happen, so it's good to commemorate that, because that's a moment in history, and I just think it's smart to do that.
Can I, total aside, not entirely related to the construction, but a little bit. But I was just thinking about when you were talking about the historic significance of the area, kind of what we're doing and welcoming people to our downtown. Do you think we could have a conversation at some point about doing like a community time capsule along with it
Oh, that'd be
opening?
fun,
Yeah,
absolutely.
when it's complete.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to go in the footing, we
Yeah.
could build a
Oh,
little,
let's build it right into it.
I think that would be
Exactly.
really cool.
Behind the
I
yeah,
plaque.
behind the plaque.
plaques.
think that would be really cool.
I think that'd be a wonderful idea.
idea.
Just bolt her up and.
Yeah.
So that brings me to another question for you guys. That is an interactive idea, right? This sort of time capsule. We've talked about a bench around the bottom of it. And what we'd like to do is make this very active, right? You guys did a lot of work on Northwest First. I don't know, 10 years ago, I think, is when it was completed.
Pretty close.
And this feels like an
We were on
element
council,
that
so
adds
it was
to
about
that.
8.
What about interactivity? Does this feel right? Does this feel like enough? You guys have any thoughts on that?
Just because I don't do this for a living, can you give me an example of what you mean by interactivity beyond time capsule? Like, what are some things that some other communities have done?
Water fountains?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was like, I don't know what that means.
Like anything that would bring people to it, right? The plaque is one thing, right? That would bring a certain person to read it. The benches would be one. You're kind of creating a landmark. Like, think about when you're talking with your friends. You're in high school. Let's meet at the archway, right? I think we talked about water fountains. I can't remember what some of the other ideas that we had.
I love the water fountain. I love the water feature idea. Looking at Amanda, I get squirmy inside, especially with quiet zones, about
Having
making an
kids playing water
attractive place for
tracks.
kids to
I
hang.
wasn't looking at her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That-
we've talked about all those
that
things.
feels icky, but I love water features, so.
Okay.
I'm just not necessarily looking for it to be a place for people to loiter, I guess.
He
in a
had like
quiet zone environment.
Yeah, he had like 100 plans, but I spoiled the other 98 with the risk stuff.
He asked for a splash
Same
pad.
thing happened.
A splash pad, yeah.
Yeah.
Dog park.
I think that the historical plaques and benches are probably enough. Maybe a
Yeah.
drinking fountain for those who are like, if Jamie's going to, or actually Calvin, I guess would be, if there's going to be something included in the little walking map, then I
Yeah.
think that would be, because there's a historical plaques on several buildings, and I think more going in eventually. So
Yeah.
I think that, in my mind, is enough activity by the railroad tracks.
Fair point.
Yeah.
If we do a community drinking fountain, can we have a dog fountain on the bottom?
Oh, like at Parsons?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
That's a really
That's
good idea.
nice.
Yes, thank you.
And a cat litter box.
No,
So if I,
A cat box is
dogs only. I was like, no, dogs only.
because, everyone puts their cat on a leash and goes for a walk.
Canby Memorial Cat Box. I like it.
Don't mind us.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor has some questions.
you had brought up the piece about the quiet zone, and that was something I jotted down here. This project clears that, because I think it's probably going to be executed before the quiet zone items get taken care of. We're clear of that. That's not going
We've
to,
incorporated this into our quiet zone application.
okay.
Oops.
We've incorporated the arch and design concept and the anchor, the base into the 60% and 90% drawings that we're putting together. The UP Railroad is going to approve.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we've taken that into consideration and included that in our submittals. And so, if they turn us down, they turn us down, and we have to go back to the drawing board. But I'm not seeing that happening. We didn't get any feedback at all the first time. And if you notice, the original rendering of this was actually fairly tight.
Yeah, it was
And-
actually in
and-
here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What we ended up doing, I said, we'll move it out as far as we can. And we want that integration with those sequoia trees, because I think that's an important element now on First Avenue. So we move it out as far as we can, and that eliminates any line of sight questions or concerns. We raise it to a minimum of 16 feet. Now you have no sightline problems at all. You can see from ground level all the way up to way above the train lights, the signal and the warning lights. So I think we're in really good shape relative to how this is going to dovetail with what we're doing on the quiet zone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'd say the only thing I would add to that is you guys have a great team of consultants for that work, and we're actually going to meet with them in Portland on Monday.
Okay.
Share this work, coordinate everything, and then
super.
come back to these guys with kind of a schedule of how all that would work together. So,
Can you go back to the aerial view? Thank you. So as we're talking about the plaque piece, to me, I think plaque's probably, if we're, depending on how overkill we want to be, put on three
Three on
sides,
each.
not four.
Not on the
Yeah.
tree
On
side.
the
Not
inner
a-
three.
I wouldn't put
not
it on the
outer.
tree
Right, okay.
Right. You have to
because
walk
this
them all.
this tree's going to get huge.
Yeah, it's going to be massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're really not, and we pushed it over this way to actually make people interact with it on the three sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the time capsule idea and the plaque idea. I think, both of our historical society and I think, is this something, Greg, that falls under the historic landmark, the plaque piece? Or
Well,
more?
I was going to mention that they already have a format for those historic plats.
Okay.
So we could dovetail into that. And I was going,
Oops.
and Tim, I was going to ask what the next step is. Is there going to be any public vetting? I was thinking about the Arts Council of Canby, the Historic Landmark Commission. Do they get a piece of this action, or are we just deciding it here?
Well, it depends on whether you want it to be done in this decade or next. I mean, realistically,
Well, I
It's-
hate
it's-
answers like that.
it's all timing.
You give me a devil's choice of, do I involve my citizens, or do I
well,
get it done now?
we did announce this as a public meeting, and
Did we send emails out to all of our boards and
we
commissions?
didn't send them to the boards and commissions, but we announced it publicly as one.
Well, okay.
But however you want to handle it, I'm not going to be here, so I'm not going to be driving this beyond now anyway, but however you want to handle it's fine.
I would think. Get closer to it.
Yes.
Further down the road in the project is the plaque part of it. I think there's still plenty of time for them to have a voice in how those look. That way there's some consistency in the ones that are already going up.
Well, absolutely, and I would agree with that completely. The challenge is getting to the next step in design so that we are able to move the project along. We could take these boards to HLC and Bike and Ped and Park and Rec and all the committees that we have. And that's probably a great idea. And I didn't mean to be flippant in my response. And I'm probably moving too fast on this just because I'm trying to get it to a point over the next couple of months. And so, maybe it does make sense to take a step back and run these ideas by all the committees and, again, get their feedback and input and then go from there.
Mr. Mayor?
So along that lines, if we could get these sent to us, we can definitely, I think, send these out to the Historic Landmark Commission and then, even the Historical Society and the art board, and even solicit ideas from them or thoughts on this as well. So when we do get to the design I'm assuming, again, when we've done these projects in the past and working with you guys on
That's right.
a couple other things, we have this dialogue. You guys go back and draw some more pictures for us because that's how we like to work. And,
That's right.
And then you bring those back to us. That might be a good point then to create further dialogue as well. So,
Yeah.
that's.
I think that there's a place in the middle, which is that we can continue to move the project forward because the structure more or less is going to be what it is going to be regardless of what I think a committee would say at this point. But there are ways to include the Arts Committee. There are ways to include the Historic Landmark Commission in helping us with the plaques and doing stuff like that. But I think at some point we have to move forward with the structure and get that process moving, and then including those committees on some of the more fine details of it, including the Arts Committee or whatever on how we light it during the holidays and how it looks like that, talking to Historic Landmark Commission about what the plaques look like. But just to be really frank, I love citizen input, but I'm not sure how much input we can get on what the structure looks like at this point because we're pretty far down. I mean, you know what I mean? We're pretty far down the field. What feedback is going to change?
It was narrowed down
With
to
the
2 before
structures.
it got to us, so.
Yeah. So I think that there's a way to include them all, but is the structure the right place to include them, or can we move forward with making progress on the structure and the placement? Does that make sense?
I would agree.
Well, we realized that we couldn't bring to you something that didn't have substance. And so we ran through a lot of preliminary steps and our whole focus was on trying to create some options that were consistent with Canby, with the current elements that exist in Canby and how could we integrate them and incorporate them and not make all the choices, but bring the project far enough along that you have something that you can decide on rather than looking, because if we just bring you a whole bunch of kind of disjointed ideas, we end up an hour or 2 or 3 hours from now, not much farther than we are now.
Sure.
That's the old design by committee challenge that we all face.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So, so some of those design element pieces. So, I like the height of these. I like the lights on top have grown on me because as I like as compared to the other way. Yeah. Just because of the point, I think when we get into the lighting aspect, if we do it uplighting or whatever, I think that impedes that effect. The plaques I like, especially if we're able to do, I like the chunkier version of the second, sorry, is it the first one? Yeah, those.
The flat rock.
Yeah, that I think just does tie in better to what's kind of already on place on First Avenue. Lights on the top, you can still do the plaques. And it's still, I don't think it detracts from that look at all. So verbiage, I can go either way, but for me, I think it just being Canby, as big and as bold as possible on that top of that sign, is really pronounced and can be backlit or do all sorts of cool lighting with that. I think the welcome to, it gets, I could go either way, but my preference would be just that it's Canby, right? I mean, the banners will be the effect that we're trying to kind of get into. And the wording of like the garden spot, like, on this particular one, I could go without it, Frank, that's, I mean, for voicing opinions. This archway to me, however way we need to make it so that we don't have clamors which is interesting that we have, so, I know.
We had to
We've
think
talked
about
about
this.
just some of those
When we made
over
the bike
years.
racks, we had to think
I
about
know,
climbers.
yeah, sharp edges and all that, so,
Yeah.
we have to probably, powder coat it with like some sort of soft cushions on the edges, but I really like that train trestle
Okay.
look to it, because I think it does kind of harken that back to that.
The first one?
This option one, yeah.
The simpler one.
Yeah, so,
But option 2 kind of has that same, it's just a little more condensed.
yeah.
Yeah.
This one feels more dramatic, and I think too, it's about the scale of, for me, the archway with the chunkier posts. I'm afraid if you put the chunkier post with the more narrow archway, like the proportion won't look quite right. You know,
It's a balance.
Does that make sense? But I think,
It's definitely not a cut and paste.
yeah.
Right? Because the proportions would be a little bit off if you did that. So we'd have to reconnoiter some of that a little bit.
And I'm going to echo the mayor on the use of welcome to. I think it's stronger to just have Canby big and bold, and then the banner could say, welcome to Country Fest, welcome to Canby's Independence Day, welcome to whatever, on an event by event basis. But I just like Canby big and bold.
Okay.
So, Rick and Guy, what's at our official meeting that's coming up, we want to authorize a contract. What are the first work products that would circulate back to us?
Okay. There was one more question. If
Oh, I'm sorry.
you were starting to raise your hand, if we wanted to do that before we get into the technical stuff.
I see in option 1 there, you've got on the left, kind of grayed out a little bit, the railroad
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah.
Do you have access, or do we know what that intersection is going to look like after it's been rebuilt for the quiet zone? I'd like to see superimposed over that what those two look like, so we don't.
It'll
And-
look substantially the same. There'll be more signage, but that's the biggest change. But I can send that out to you for Grant Street. But not a lot of change that's going to happen at Grant Street, unlike at Elm, where we have to redesign that right turn corner.
There won't be different types of arms?
I think that the arms are supposed to be the same. They may be longer, but I think that they're supposed to be the same. One of the questions that came up in 2016 that hasn't come up now was a question of whether the city would be willing to fund the operation and maintenance of, as an alternative, of the 4 full-length arms going across as an alternative to the standard types of arms which they have here. And the cost was extraordinary. Not just for the installation of the new arms, but for you're required to maintain them in perpetuity as well. And so my belief is that you're not going to see a substantial change other than in signage, you're not going to see a substantial change in the road alignment or in the lighting, the signalization and lighting of that overhanging signal that you see it superimposed over the top of where it says Canby. Now you will see some, and it'll be just on the walking sidewalks on either side. You'll see there'll be some red or some flashing lights that says basically say train coming, and on either side, and that's part of the quiet zone. And they'll sit at eye level, so about 6 feet high. We don't have enough information yet, and we could do it with the 90% drawings, I believe, but I don't know if we can get this level of detail. We'd have to look into that to know exactly what is going to be there beyond what I've already just mentioned. I think that's a relevant question. And maybe when we get to the 90% drawings, we can take those drawings and superimpose this on those, but I'm not quite sure how we'll get the street level detail. We can work on that and we can bring that back to you.
Well, I'd like us to sign off on something that we know it's actually going to look like. This sounds like a bad home remodel project where you forget that the new window you put in looks out over your neighbor's garbage can. That's not right, because there's also an arm on the other side. So I'd like to see this as ugly as it's actually going to look.
Sure.
With all of the signs that are going to be there, instead of an idealized thing. And then when it's actually built, say, well, that's not what we agreed to.
Sure, and that makes sense. So I don't know if you want to go back to your question.
Yeah, because I'm interested in what will be coming back to us, so we have another checkpoint on what does it look like.
Yeah.
We can get it out to the public.
Well, and it's a good question, because actually I was going to say exactly that, where it seems like everybody in the group is in alignment with kind of a version that's between both options. So my suggestion would be, let us go back, do some design work on that. Work with the other consultants that the city has hired on the quiet zone, which we're going to meet with them Monday, to find out where they're at. And then we can use our technology to make this actually look like what it's actually going to be with all the infrastructure work.
Because what I'd like to see is, especially the height of the top of the arch compared to the railroad arms, from, I guess, from a height of about 6 feet off the ground.
Sure.
That's what people will be driving by and be seeing it mostly as, again, it would be sad to have this turn out where something was in the way of something.
Oh, I completely agree.
That we had an artistic display and we ended up with an ugly railroad light in front of it.
I completely agree. So you guys know how this works. It's all a model, right? It's all three-dimensional. All this stuff is built in. So we can actually do views from you're walking up to this at 5'6" or 6 foot, and what you see, you can do it as a driver. And from both directions is what I'm hearing, so that you guys can really investigate that.
That'd be great.
And that's fine.
So it's a fly-through type model?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the next step, to answer your question, Chair Dale, would be that our architects would go back and create a hybrid based on what they've heard from you, superimpose what we think the elements of the quiet zone are going to be, and then that would come back to you again for another look.
So if I could add to that, I guess what would be helpful for me is we'll go as far as actually doing a lighting scheme, so you guys can see how that works. And also maybe we tie in the historic landmarks piece as well and talk to you about how big those plaques could be. And then you can use that however you want with that committee or that group. And with all of that information, we would then have enough to start our real design work and design development construction documents with some feedback from you guys, which is a pretty lengthy process. It's going to take us a while to get this actually designed in a way that we can get permits and things.
Yeah, and Rick, this contract is just design and administration, right? It's not actual construction yet.
The next phase that you'll be getting in 15 minutes will take us through construction.
Oh, it will go through construction. Okay, so we'll establish the budget and construction. All right.
Mr. Chair, can I be really picky for a second in presenting
Please.
this to the community? That's not a one-way street. And I'm trying to imagine you presenting this to the community with a truck going the wrong way down the street. And it's really, my cognitive dissonance is struggling there. Is there any way to move the truck to the right side of the
I'm
road?
so glad you said that.
Okay.
I was going to bring a gift card for whoever saw it. We know. We just
Okay.
wanted to see
Yeah,
what
I mean,
you guys thought.
obviously it doesn't impact like from design, but in presenting it to the community, it would be nice if it accurately represented the road.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The driver had already gone to Country Fast.
I'm about to call, I was like, I'm about to call Canby PD.
If you, going back to the library renderings, if you guys look really closely, there's a wolf in the rendering. We like to add little things.
Little Easter
for people
eggs.
to see. So thank you for your comment.
Finding that, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe a with and without banner too. And for the banner, I would suggest a non-commercial banner.
Yes, I was going to say, city
A
sanctioned
more-
event
or
would be
city
good.
event.
Yeah, city event.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We liked wild hair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We do
it is
too.
It is a commercial event.
Yeah.
But you know, you bring it up to the community and then there'll be another bar that
It's a
says,
great
hey, why
comment.
didn't you put my thing up there?
Great comment.
So how does that feel to folks?
Excited.
Is that a reasonable bring back
Yep.
at our next visit?
I think so.
Rick,
That
how's
might
that
be
feel?
a really ideal time to address Councilor Parker's issues too.
That's what I'm
Make sure that
thinking, that's,
We have an invite well in advance for all of the committees, and then those that want to attend and participate have that opportunity.
we can electronically publish it out to them and then have the gathering here. Great.
Well, there's also something else that I'd ask Rick about. When Calvin and I were talking about trying to recruit some additional volunteers for the 4th of July, I believe Calvin put together a database of a mailing list of all of our boards and commissions, and so that we could flash that out. So I'm thinking that is another tool that, instead of having people be here in person, but these are already leaders of our community, and to be able to send this out to them. So since we've already gone through that effort of establishing a mailing list,
let's use it. And accept electronic feedback. Go ahead and email us if you can't make it. Yeah.
Great idea.
And our friends at Scott Edwards can coordinate that, right?
We'll take care of it.
No,
Just kidding.
I'm teasing Rick. I'm trying to lighten staff burden. Any other questions, thoughts?
I'm just excited about the art.
It looks,
It's gonna be a great addition to
it's
it.
gonna be,
It's going to be really nice.
The Rick Robinson Gateway Arch.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
There it is.
Yeah, but put the dedication plaque with his name.
yeah, that's a big Rick.
Your initials are RR.
They are, railroad.
Railroad.
I will be long gone, but I'll be excited to see the dedication.
So for Rick and you guys, are we at right now where you need us to be?
I'm comfortable to get to the next step, or
Yeah, this feels great.
Counselor, are you?
Agency, are we at where we need to be
I think so.
for the next step anyway?
Yeah.
Okay.
So our takeaway from this is that we'll go back and we'll work up another kind of a hybrid drawing that will come back to you. We'll send it to you first via email to take any comments back. We'll distribute it to the committee members. We'll schedule the follow-up meeting similar to this, make sure that everyone has an invite, and then get final input, and we can go right to design drawings and probably be out to bid in the spring.
Yeah,
Excellent.
perfect.
All right.
Thank you guys for your
Thank you
time.
all.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that it, everyone? All right.
Going once.
Well, thank you, Canby. We'll be closing the workshop now, and we'll be back for the Urban Renewal Agency meeting in 12 minutes at 6:45. Welcome to the Canby Urban Renewal Agency special meeting of August 7th, 2019 at 6:45. We will forego the traditional opening for our city council meeting in 15 minutes. And with that, we'll open it up to citizen input. Is anyone here tonight that would like to address the Urban Renewal Agency? And seeing none, do we have any community announcements?
No, we don't.
We do not. And with that, I'm ready for the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the June 19th, 2019 Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Hodson, seconded by Commissioner Spoon, to accept the consent agenda, which is the minutes of the June 19th, 2019 Urban Renewal Agency meeting. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And that passes 6-0. Next, I think we're 6.
Yeah, sorry.
Next up, we have resolutions and ordinances, URR 19-007. Agency Director.
Yes, this is a request to approve an agreement with Scott Edwards Architecture for the continued design of the Grant Street Canby Gateway Arch. Project design fee is $45,000. As you are aware from work session this evening, that Scott Edwards has done some preliminary work on this project. We have outside the contract already had geotechnical work done and some preliminary survey work done to identify any issues associated with the design. We're ready now to move to the next phase, which is a more focused design that will lead us into ultimately the development of construction documents that we will hopefully by next spring be prepared to take out to public bid. This evening, all I'm requesting of you is to approve the agreement with Scott Edwards Architecture in the amount of $45,000.
All right, do we have any questions for our director? I noticed the pricing was done by Triplet Wellman.
Yes,
Good
we
call.
did. We
Good local
called on them
experience.
to donate some of their time to price the project to make sure we were in the ballpark, and they very graciously agreed to do so. We hope that they are interested in bidding this project. I think that they are, just because they like working with Canby.
Yeah, it's been a good history with them.
Yes.
Any question or discussion? All right, Commissioner Varwig, you have the official.
Yes, I do. I move to adopt URR 19-007, a resolution of the City of Canby Urban Renewal Agency authorizing the agency chair to execute a contract with Scott Edwards Architecture, LLC, for design, bid, and contract administration of the Grant Street Arch as provided in the attached agreement.
And a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Varwig, seconded by Vice Chair Hodson, to approve resolution URR 19-007, a resolution of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency authorizing the agency chair to execute a contract with Scott Edwards Architecture, LLC, for design, bid, and contract administration of the Grant Street Arch as provided in the attached agreement. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 6-0. Mr. Director, do we have any new business?
We do not. I would like to note that Brian Mars, who's a principal with Scott Edwards Architecture, has taken a particular interest in this project. So we are fortunate that we have a principal working directly with the city on the design and development of this project. So
Yeah, I
really
was surprised
appreciate
when I got his business card to see principal. I went, really?
Yeah.
On something this small?
Yeah,
That's
it's
pretty cool.
It's a big deal.
That is a big deal. So,
That's all I have.
that's all you had? All right, anything else from the dais? Mr. Director, is there any other business for the agency tonight?
No.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Commissioner Varwig, that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. The Canby Urban Renewal Agency is adjourned. Stick around. In 10 minutes, City Council will start up at 7 o'clock.
Welcome to the Canby City Council meeting for August 7th, 2019. If you will please stand for the invocation and the flag salute. In tonight's invocation, really please just want to take a moment of silence for the cities and families in Ohio and Texas with the tragedies that have occurred over here within this last week. So if we can just please take a moment of silence for all those impacted by this. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the swearing in of our new city councilor, Trig Berge. So Trig, you want to come on up and judge? Good evening, Judge Graff. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. All right. Good to see you.
It's good to be seen. So,
Judge, could you move the microphone a little closer to you?
There we go.
is that better? Okay, so why don't you
Where do I
face me
stand?
here?
Face you
Right
right
there.
there.
Yep,
All
that'll
right.
work. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Trigby Berge,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I have been duly appointed to the office
that I've been duly appointed to the office
of City Councilor of the City of Canby
of City Councilor of the City of Canby
by the Canby City Council,
by the Canby City Council.
that I am a qualified elector of the City of Canby,
I'm a qualified elector of the City of Canby,
and that I have resided in the City of Canby, Oregon,
and I have resided in the City of Canby, Oregon
for not less than 12 months
for not less than 12 months,
immediately prior to the City Council appointment
immediately upon appointment of the City Council
on August 7th, 2019,
on August 7th, 2019,
and that I will support the Constitution and laws
and I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and the State of Oregon,
and the State of Oregon,
and will faithfully perform the duties
and will faithfully perform the duties
of the office of City Councilor
of the office of City Councilor
of the City of Canby, Oregon,
of the City of Canby, Oregon,
to which I have been appointed.
to which I've been appointed.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You need to sign that. And then I need to sign that. And then, there he is, the notary. It's too late now. There you go. Good to have you aboard, though. Congratulations.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge. We'll get Trig situated here. Congratulations, sir. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
You picked a doozy of a meeting to start in on, so we'll get into it. Communications, Mr. Robinson. Nothing at this time. Great. It's our first opportunity for citizen input and community announcements. It's the opportunity for citizens to approach the council on non-agenda items. If you have something you'd like to address us on, please fill out a little yellow card in the back there and hand it to our city attorney / recorder for the evening, Mr. Lindsay, and we'll make sure that you get up here to let us know what you have to say. You have 3 minutes to address the council on whatever issue You have. So first I have Christy Smith regarding a community event.
Hi.
Hi.
So yes, my name is Christy, and I live in Canby. And I wanted to let you all know, as well as the community, about an event that's coming up. The end of this month, August 24th, we're having a diversity night out from 3 to 7 at Locust Park. And sort of the hope is to get the community together to celebrate diversity and friendship. The event is being led by the Canby Transgender Alliance, P-Flag, Safe in the Living Room. And just a couple of cool things to keep in mind is that all folks are welcome, kids especially, because it's fun times. There'll be music, activities, fun, food. Folks can bring a dish to share if they'd like, but it's not required. And chairs, blankets, because we're going to kind of spread out and get to know each other. So you all are invited, and as is the rest of Canby.
Christy, can you repeat the date again on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's August 24th. That's a Saturday from about 3 to 7. So it's drop-in style if folks want to come spend a little time, eat a little food, have a little fun, and then move on with their day.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Christy. Appreciate it. Next yellow card I have is Amira Stanley. Hi, Amira. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Cool. I just wanted to do a little recap. Sorry, my name is Amira Stanley. I lived in Canby for 2 years now. I just wanted to do a little recap on the 4th of July parade that we did. It was basically the Canby Trans Alliance group, P-Flag, Safe, all of us together. Our theme was leading with love. It was very positive. I also tabled at the event afterwards, and it was a lot of love. We only had like 2 kind of issues, but it was brushed off really easily. It was very positive. A lot of people came up to us and just thanked us for being there. Even people just bringing by their kids to get stickers. It was just very positive, and we appreciate it. Also, I just want to make very clear that next year we plan on we did have a large pride flag and a large trans flag. Our goal next year is to have a large American flag as well. And we did have mini flags, but we got overzealous and handed them out too quickly. So I think some people thought, like, where's the American flag? And it's like, I swear we had them. So we want everyone to feel included. We'll make sure that we have a lot of extra American flags next year. But we just wanted to say thank you. It was great. So,
Great.
thanks.
Thank you, Amira. Thanks for being a part of it. Great. We'll move into mayor's business. I'll try to be brief. Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, I did not attend the meeting this month because I was at the Oregon Mayors Association Conference in Medford. So I'll get you notes for next time. The Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation Committee that I sit on met on Monday, actually here in Canby. So we had the 30-member panel out for the evening, and actually a good part of the day. We actually took about 15, 20 members of the commission on a tour of Canby to show off kind of some of the things that we've been working on in Canby, as well as some key transportation pieces. So we started here at the Civic Center. We went out to the Canby Police Station to show the planned Berg Parkway extension. So show them that side of the overpass coming from 99, and then how it would connect across to Arndt Road. And then we took them back out to Arndt Road to show them where it would tie in out there at Arndt Road for that connection, because many of them, we've talked about it at this commission, and the county has that as a priority project. But again, visually taking them to see it so they could understand how it ties in. Then we took them around and showed them pieces. As we toured Canby, we showed them pieces of the emerald necklace that we're working on. So we went out to the Three Sisters property in Wayside Park and the Public Works area to show them kind of the back area where that all kind of connects, and then ran that out, to Sequoia. And we talked about how our plan is to try to tie Canby and Molalla together on the trail. And that's a big, a lot of the funding for a project like that is going to have to come from through ODOT, through the various funding mechanisms, so state transportation improvement funds, and things like that. And so, again, it was everything we showed them was really well received. We went through the industrial park and took them by Columbia Distributing and showed them the project and the road improvements that were made there on Malino, and then also showed them where we're looking at trying to punch through to 99 from the industrial park. So again, that's going to be a big project for us, but any way we can get ODOT help on that project is going to be big. Then we showed them, we ran Malino Road and Township Road out to 99 to show the kind of the south truck route and just challenges we have with that. And then wrapped up with bringing them back along 99E during early rush hour time to show them just how congested I-5 and 205 make 99E for us during the rush hour time. So that was a big part of the day in the presentation. We also went over some corridor bottleneck projects that are being looked at by ODOT along 26, 217, I-5, and I-205, and then state transportation improvement funding for some multimodal pieces. So that was the bulk of that agenda. But the big thing was getting them here in Canby and doing the tour with them. And a lot of the feedback, the feedback from them was just impressed on what we've been doing here in Canby. So, this building, the Dahlia, the industrial park, the movie theater, a lot of them haven't been out to Canby in a long period of time. So seeing what we've been doing was pretty impactful to know that, wow, there's a lot going on in Canby. And then showing them all the housing subdivisions as well was kind of shocking to some of them as well, just in how much was going on. To back up for a minute, at the OMA conference, the Mayor's Association conference, we do a breakout session where all the state agencies come, and the mayors can ask questions and engage with them. So I did sit down and talked with ODOT and with Business Oregon to talk about the Walnut to 99 road connection and try to get that on their radar as soon as possible. I know that we've had some dialogue already with ODOT because their impetus is that we find a way, and I think we have a way, so just getting that on their radar. Business Oregon was really, really excited about the project, so we might have an opportunity to really engage them with some opportunity funds for the road. And then I also met with State of Oregon Parks and Rec to talk to them about Molalla State Park and our Emerald Necklace Trail and the Molalla connection. So some good pieces there. Last night, the Planning Commission and City Council had a joint meeting. I want to thank you all for giving up a Tuesday night, very much off-cycle for us to meet. The meeting was about a review of a housing needs assessment that we've been working on as a city. County's just about done with theirs as well. And what that is something that we as a city, every city in Oregon needs to do about every 20 years, and it's to look at just that, what are the housing needs across the various cities and counties in Oregon. So we came back with that, with some recommendations of potential tools that we could use to help with housing development. And then we have some potential zoning conversations coming our way on that because of this assessment aspect. So there'll be more coming on that in the future. Our new city manager, Scott McClure, will begin on October 7th. So we're closing in on that. I had a long conversation with the mayor of Monmouth at the conference, and she's very sad to see Scott go. But she understands the opportunity that's here before him. So and then also the mayors of Dallas and Independence are sad to see him go as well. And I ran into Tony Crawford, who has worked with Scott quite a bit at Western Oregon on a couple of projects, and Tony had nothing but nice things to say about him as well. So I'm excited to get him on and get him going. Some events coming up. August 17th, it will be the next Bridging Cultures event. and that's going to be at Locust Street Park. August 18th is going to be the last Slice of Summer concert, and that's going to be Johnny Limbo and the Lugnuts. And then on August 23rd is Canby's Big Night Out, so that's Canby's big street party downtown. Kicks off Canby's Big Weekend, which is that weekend. So mark your calendars. We've got tons of live music, tons of food, and it's an event that seems to be growing every year. Then that leads into Canby's Big Weekend, which is the the Cutsforth Fifth Way Car Show, and that's on the morning of Saturday the 24th, and the Dahlia Festival begins, and a host of other events all weekend long. I talked with Mr. Cutsforth last week, and they had already 210 cars registered for the event for this year. So, that could be a sign of many, many cars coming into Canby on that day. So I think last year they almost hit 600. So that'll be a big event.
Marquee outside, it's the biggest one yet.
The what's that?
The marquee outside the store says
Their biggest one yet.
25th anniversary.
So yeah, it could be really big. I guess there's a couple people coming from the East Coast that are shipping their cars here to Oregon for this event. So yeah, so definitely a big thing. So that concludes my business. We'll start with council liaison reports. Councilor Berkey, anything this evening?
Seeing it's the first night, no, I don't have anything.
Okay. Councilor Parker.
Mine can can stay until next meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilor Hensley?
Mine will as well. I did attend the C4 meeting in your place. I can just tell everyone the conversation was about housing and the Metro Housing Bond, but I have not yet grabbed my chicken scratching into actual report yet, so we can wait.
Thank you.
And traffic safety isn't until this Friday.
Great, thank you. Council President Dale?
Catch you double next time.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilor Farwig?
Ditto.
All right. And Councilor Spoon?
Almost ditto, but I do have two small things.
Okay.
First, next week is Fair Week, so be a little extra patient with the traffic and with all the activity in town. And part of that is that the Canby Kiwanis Kitty Caper Parade, say that 5 times fast, is Tuesday, August 13th at 8 a.m. And they are having a bike decorating party the day before. So if your kids like to be in the Kitty Capers Parade, or if they haven't been yet, please go to Kiwanis website or Facebook page, find out the place and time of the bike decorating, and get them involved, because I believe at the end of the Kitty Capers Parade, when they launch the fair, I'm looking to Councilor Parker here, it's family day, so families get in free until 3 p.m. And then, so a good affordable way to attend the fair. And then finally, I'll save all my liaison reports, but the Transit Advisory Committee does have an opening if you're interested in applying. I talked to Julie Whaling about maybe what perspectives they don't already have on the board so that we can diversify and really have a representative board. And she indicated that we don't have any students on the board. We don't have anyone that rides a fixed route on the board, and we have no Latino representation on the board. So anyone is welcome to apply, but those are perspectives that we're currently missing. So I would particularly encourage anyone that fits one of those perspectives to apply for the position, and we'll probably be filling it in the next few weeks, I'd imagine. So
Great.
You can find the application on the city website.
Great, thank you. That's had to be the fastest liaison report I think we've had in months. Consent, we'll move into the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the minutes of the June 26th, 2019 City Council regular meeting, the July 10th, 2019 City Council special meeting, the July 11th, 2019 City Council special meeting, and the July 17th, 2019 City Council special meeting, and to appoint Tom Rushton to the Traffic Safety Commission for a term to end on June 30th, 2021.
I'll second. And I'll say it'll be nice to have Mr. Rushton as an official member since he's there month after month.
Motion's been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which includes the adoption of the minutes of the June 26, 2019 City Council regular meeting, the July 10th, 2019 City Council special meeting, the July 11th, 2019 City Council special meeting, and the July 17th, 2019 City Council special meeting, and to appoint Tom Rushton to the Traffic Safety Commission for a term to end on June 30th, 2021. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Moving into the meat of this evening, we've got 2 public hearings this evening. So the first one is regarding annexation 18-06. Is that right-of-way 18-06, Joe? ROW, right-of-way?
Yes, right-of-way.
Thank you.
Yes.
So let me read my little hearing format piece, and we'll get going. So the matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out a yellow public testimony card and give it to the city recorder. At the appropriate time, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and interest in the matter. Those people other than the applicants that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please indicate your desire to speak by raising your hands at this time. Seeing none. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. The applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be allowed 3 minutes each, and the opponents will be allowed 3 minutes each. The applicant will then have 5 minutes for rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the mayor. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received both for and against shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained in the staff report. Conflicts of interest. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest, please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing the present matter. Councilor Berge, any conflicts of interest?
No.
Councilor Parker?
None.
Councilor Hensley?
None, plan to participate.
Thank you. Council President Dale?
None and will participate.
Councilor Varga?
None and will participate.
Councilor Spoon?
None will participate.
And I have none and will participate. Ex parte contact. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. Councilor Berge, any ex parte contact?
No.
Thank you. Councilor Parker?
No.
Councilor Hensley?
Other than driving down that road many times a week, no.
Thank you. Council President Dale?
None.
Councilor Varga?
None.
Councilor Spoon?
I also drive by it regularly, but that's it.
Thank you. Does any member of the audience have any questions of any councilor or the mayor regarding ex parte contact or conflicts of interest? All right, seeing none, the public hearing will be conducted as follows. Staff report. We'll have the staff report, then questions, if any, by the hearing body. I will open up public hearing for testimony. The applicant, if more time is needed, not more than 15 minutes. Proponents, not more than 3 minutes. Opponents, not more than 3 minutes. And rebuttal by applicant, not more than, what did I say, 5 or 10 minutes earlier? We'll say 5 minutes, Sandy.
It's a long night.
I will then close the public hearing. Questions, if any, by the hearing body, and then discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure of the hearing? No? Great. We will go into the staff report. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, Sandy Freund, City of Canby Planning. Good evening, Mayor, council members. This is pretty much a technical amendment. It's a request by the city as the applicant to annex Southeast Township Road, which is considered a public right-of-way, into the city's jurisdiction, and the total area of annexation is approximately 2.32 acres, 110,000 square feet, roughly. And it does not include any developable property. So there's no zoning that goes with this. The portion of the right-of-way to be annexed is that hashed area, so you can see it there. And it's between the western boundary of Molalla Forest Road and the western boundary of Mulino Road, and includes one railroad crossing, which is owned by the Union Pacific Railroad and also leased by Oregon Pacific Railroad. Over the past 3 decades, there have been annexations along Southeast Township Road. for developable property. However, only one of those 4 annexations included the right-of-way into the city's jurisdiction. This annexation request is just to bring the remaining portions of Township Road into the city's jurisdiction, and it would help with the permitting and maintenance responsibilities to be clear for the public and the developers alike. And that provides better customer service for all of us. The applicable criteria used, that the Planning Commission used in evaluating this annexation, are included in those sections of the code that you see listed there, and they're in your staff report. And the recommendation is based on the facts and findings and conclusions of this report and the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Staff recommends the City Council approve annexation case file ANN 18-06. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
Great. Questions?
This might be the most straightforward annexation we have see or will ever see.
Yeah, I agree. It was surprising that so much of town, that section of township is not within the city. So I'm glad that we're getting that brought in, so we can take care of it better than the county. Great. Any other thoughts, comments on that? Okay. I will now open up the public hearing. If there's anything else any questions or other comments from the applicant at all, Sandy? No? I had no proponents or opponents for this. So Sandy, I think you're off the hook, so I will close the public hearing. Any other questions or discussion by this group at all? Okay, great. And I think that's coming up for us in the ordinances and resolutions for us to approve here in a little bit. Great. Thank you, Sandy. All right. The next public hearing is for CPA TA 19-01, so I will read a new hearing format. The matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out a yellow public testimony card and give it to the city recorder. At the appropriate time, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and interest in the matter. Those people that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please indicate your desire to speak by raising your hands at this time. Was that you just stretching there, Mr. English? Thank you, sir. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. All questions must be directed through the mayor. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received both for and against shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. The staff report will have questions, if any, by the hearing body. I'll open the public hearing for testimony. Proponents, so we'll have not more than 3 minutes. Opponents, not more than 3 minutes. I will then close the public hearing. And then there will be any other questions and discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedures of this hearing? No? Great. Mr. Brown, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I apologize that we had 400 or so pages. We've supplied all of that code to go along with the proposed comprehensive plan and code amendment so that you could look at any of the changes in context and know the headings that they were under, etc. We could very easily attach to an ordinance, if it was to be passed tonight, a shorter version of the exhibit of the changes that are just the pages that have a change on it as we send it off to code improvement people and such. The request tonight is kind of two-part because it is a comprehensive plan amendment in terms of making a single change in the area of special concerns section of our comprehensive plan. In the text itself, and we've included a page in your packet that shows all we're trying to do is eliminate reference to the special area of concern K, which involves a single property at the intersection of Southeast 13th Avenue and South Ivy Street, where, if you recall, a proposed townhome project was proposed not that long ago. By the action of the council and denying that use, that was a proposed change of zone, actually in accordance with the comprehensive plan, we felt that it was time to change the reference of the comprehensive plan to represent the zoning that the property actually has, which is low-density residential. So that's what that amendment is about, is recognizing that we need to be trying to follow our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan has been determined to not be appropriate in that area, so we're deleting reference to that so it follows the zone. And we've had 2 proposals on that property since that time. Neither have made a final application at this point, but they're all uses that would be allowed under the current zoning of R1.
I'm sorry, Brian, can you say the last part again?
Yeah, the 2 uses that have been proposed are allowed under the R1 zone, one with a conditional use permit.
Okay, so they don't, the changes we're making here doesn't change those 2?
No, it doesn't affect them in any manner.
Okay.
So then the other aspect of the proposal is amending the Land Development and Planning Ordinance, which is Chapter 16 of the Canby Municipal Code. And there are some changes. They're fairly minor in nature throughout 32 different chapters of the code. And as we explained in the staff report, they're mainly trying to address known issues that have come up in the implementation of the code for several years. And staff has tried to make a list of those over time, and there's still more on our list. This was all we could get to, and thought that we would never get something in front of you if we kept whittling down our list, so we just cut it off and said, we're coming forward to you. It includes a couple requirements that are required by state statute. Can't think all of them, but one of them for certain is how we handle accessory dwelling units. And so that's in there. And there's a couple others that are by state statute that we're doing the changes. And then we have a couple things that we fixed that have come up that's basically were on your bubble of land use issues that we've heard concerns voiced at the public hearing and things. So we have those in here as well. The staff memorandum that I paired for you lists about 21 items. I don't think I'm going to go through each one of those, but these are what I thought were items of note that are being changed in the entire chapter. And the first 4 that are listed in that memorandum are basically the 4 that had the greatest discussion through the 5 work sessions that we held with the Planning Commission, where they went through every word and every sentence that was proposed to be changed. And then we had 2 public hearings as well to give us time to respond to some public input that we'd received throughout those 5 work sessions and the public hearings. And let me turn to that. I had tabs even here to help me, but I don't know if it's helping. All right, so in regards to public input received, there are probably at least 4 different packets that we received from Regina Taylor throughout those work sessions and the public hearings. And so they're included. And several of the topics that were primary discussion were related about topics that she had brought up, and trying to respond to her, and we appreciate the input that she provided. She was the lone person and pretty much at our work sessions and at the public hearing.
She's become another quasi-planning commissioner.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, so, yeah.
We also have input from the Fair Housing Council, and it's not unusual whenever there's text amendments or comprehensive plan amendments, they send us a letter, so this is fairly common to us. But it's kind of apropos to read a paragraph in their memorandum because it's kind of related to the work session you just held last night. It says that, as you know, all amendments to the city's comprehensive plan and zoning map, we're not making changes to the zoning map tonight, but we are making a change to the comprehensive plan map, the deletion of Area K, must comply with statewide planning goals. When a decision is made affecting the residential land supply, the city must refer to its housing needs analysis and buildable land inventory in order to show that an adequate number of needed housing units, both housing type and affordability level, will be supported by the residential land supply after the enactment of the proposed change. So they actually have an interest in evaluating whether the comp plan amendment eliminating the special area of K designation for potential housing types as residential townhomes and such, they could have an interest in that particular issue. Our findings tonight regarding that are basically that the proposed rezoning, as I mentioned to you before, to the CR zone was determined to be too impactful for the location, so in effect, relegating the comp plan land use designation as no longer suitable for the property. Therefore, recognizing that we needed to amend that one particular property. It's not going to have a significant impact on the overall housing supply of the community. And so I want to put that on record as a finding. So I wanted to mention to make sure that you were aware of the 4 topics that were in the July 8th Planning Commission memorandum that were addressing many of the topics that Regina raised, having to do with the townhouse dwellings, common wall, and having to do with the review process for partitions, both major and minor, and one having to do with multifamily development that is going next to single-family zone that has a home but is designated by the comprehensive plan to be appropriate to also rezone to multifamily. We require currently a 15-foot buffer on that multifamily zone to help protect that existing home. We had an application by a developer who requested that we review his proposed text amendments to provide an exception to that 15-foot buffer if the adjacent single-family zoned property was designated in the comp plan to be changed in the future to multifamily. The reason being that that 15-foot buffer puts severe limitations on the ability of the multifamily property in infill situations where they're fairly small lots that used to have a house on it, but now is trying to build the multifamily housing we need to make that happen and meet the minimum 14 units per acre density. So surprisingly, the standard setback is 7 foot. 15-foot extra to help protect the existing home that might transition in the future to take advantage of that opportunity to rezone. And the Planning Commission unanimously were opposed to providing that exception. So I just wanted to explain that because we're not pushing that any longer since the Planning Commission was not interested in that. Those wordings, the text wording addressing those topics are attached to that July 8th memorandum. So that's the first thing in your packet that you see. You see a definition section, and then you see some code sections, and it's those wording that is the revised wording that the Planning Commission is recommending you go with. Later on, you'll get the full original packet that we gave the Planning Commission that has these same sections in it, but those are the old wording. So I wanted to make sure you weren't concentrating later on in the packet the wording that you had, but it's those 4 topics have revised wording, and that's what they're recommending. I had some input from Councilor Dale, gave me a heads up. We had a very busy day and a half, but with Sandy's help, we were able to find a couple sections of the state statutes that would help address the questions that you had, Councilor Dale.
Just for context, I asked Brian some questions about 16.04, 445, and 525 about the classification of nursing homes and residential care facilities.
So there's, unfortunately, there's so many sections in state statute that they refer to similar things in various locations. And so it makes it, unless you're an expert, it makes it practically impossible to be 100% sure of all the answers that we end up getting. But one of your questions is, how is a nursing home different from a residential care facility? And basically, we found out that there is no difference. They're using pretty much this residential facility as a catch-all for those uses that involve the definitions of residential care. And it also mentions in our code where we've added those definitions about residential treatment. There's another one too, I can't remember, but it's more than just care. But it's for 6 or greater in the number of individuals.
Right.
We're not quite sure why we indicated in our definition from 6 to 15. Okay. So it may actually be more appropriate if we get rid of the 15 from what we've just looked up from trying to answer your questions. You asked if there was OR's definition of standard of care or size that differentiates a residential care facility. And yes, there is. It's basically by that number of people, 6 or above is a residential care facility. Anything lower than 6, 5 or fewer is a home, a residential home. And there's all sorts of permutations that they have and further definitions of a treatment facility and a treatment home. But when they use facility, they're talking about 6 or more. And when they use a home, they're talking about 5 or fewer. Okay. And that's actually important. And your inquiry helped us realize that we had left out and didn't take, we put the definitions in our code, but we didn't put them in any chapter to be used. Okay. So what we need to do, and would like you to allow us to do, and look at for second reading or something, is add that the residential care home will be an outright permitted use in the R1 zone. It would be a conditional use for a residential care facility and all the things that that involves by the definition and by state statute.
So that goes to your mentioning that one of the projects interested at 13 and Ivy is permissible with a conditional use permit.
Right.
Because it's larger than a home.
Right.
Okay.
And so that gets to one of your other questions is how do we classify independent living, assisted living, memory care facilities? Well, they're all part of the residential care facility.
Okay.
And there are further definitions about nursing in another part of state statute and such, and probably some additional licensing requirements and such. But they actually include them. They're all the same thing, and that's how our code would be treating them. Our nursing home is listed in the code today, and it's listed in the R1 zone, the low density, as a conditional use that you can do a nursing home.
Okay.
And so the same thing with all the others that you mentioned here, we're just, the catch-all word by statute now seems to be residential care facility.
Instead of nursing home explicitly. And now we're based on number of beds. So it's a nice, clean definition.
Right.
It's not so much around use as it is size.
So it says, our code used to talk about congregate care facilities, nursing homes, convalescent home, sanatorium.
Yeah.
Those are kind of old terminologies. And the statute isn't really using those now, and so it's using this catch-all residential care facility.
Great.
Then there was one other question on the end here about that we may require an applicant proposing to site a residential care facility to supply the city with a copy of the entire application. And you wanted to know if we did so, what would the city use that application for? And really what we believe is it's for verification that they have obtained or are going to obtain the state licensing.
They're for real.
Yeah, that they're for real. So that's the main thing. And since they're done by conditional use permit, we can always make a condition that they verify that they've obtained the state license before we give them the city license.
Gotcha, which makes sense.
So that's how we think we would
And that's a
make use of that.
pretty high bar. So I like it, yeah.
Yeah.
They're absolutely serious, and they've done a big investment to get the license, so.
So, unless you want me to go through the 21 individual highlights, I was going to let you ask any particular questions and see if I can answer them.
So I just wanted to confirm on, you'll come back on the second reading with amended text for?
Yes.
Okay, super. Thank you, Brian.
Councilor Spoon, did you have a question regarding the series of questions by Council President Dale?
No,
No.
they got to what I was saying.
Okay.
Eventually they got there.
Perfect. So I guess it's up to the pleasure of the council. Is our desire to just ask our planning director specific questions on the 21 items listed, or do we want to go item by item and walk through these? What's your pleasure?
Questions make the most sense because it'll.
Most expeditious.
Okay. Well, I want to be expeditious, but I also want to be thorough. And that's
Yeah.
because-
Yeah.
Again, so just background on where we're at with this, and thank you, Brian, and the Planning Commission for 5 work sessions and 2 public hearings on this. So over the last couple of years, we've been having a lot of development going on in Canby, and through the process of annexations and concept plans and whatnot, we've run into what we feel are about, Tim, I think we capped out, you sent it to me, about almost 4 pages.
4 pages,
of
yeah.
code, standards, et cetera, that we felt jamming us up in how we are developing our city, and as well as interpreting our own code. So we tasked the planning staff and the planning commission to go back and start looking at these 4 pages of items and start coming back with some corrections or solutions or items for us to look at and begin dialoguing and determining are these policy issues, is this just text that could be changed at the planning commission level, just to start to clear these things up. And so what we have tonight are the first 21 items of several to take care of, but there's a lot of the text in here as we go through it And thank you, Councilor Dale had sent out just kind of a brief piece for us to kind of streamline 500 pages into looking at what's been stricken from what's old, what's being changed to what's new, and how does that sit with us and how does that play out through development. So it's a lot of definition changes here this first wave through, as Council President Dale has mentioned, which will give us, I think, context later on as we start to dive into some of the meatier pieces of our code, and we look at development as we start looking at the next wave of development that we're starting to see coming along towards us. So is it pretty fair, kind of a summation there, Mr. Brown, of what we're looking at here tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, then I will just.
Yeah, can I just add, like.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If you have something you want to say first.
No, you go.
If you guys want to go with the amendments to the state definitions of residential care facilities, and there being a conditional use in R1 zoning, I crafted some language, if somebody's going to make a motion, that would say, if you're moving to amend Canby's comprehensive plan in Title 16 of the municipal code, and you could add the words with further amendments of state definitions of residential care facilities, along with there being a conditional use in R1 zoning, as a help, if that is what you're so inclined to do.
Okay, so if we get to that point,
And you're,
count on that as a reminder.
and
Joe,
if
thank
you did want to do that and you failed to read this in, what you would in fact be doing is a new first reading next time this comes up. So this avoids that eventuality.
Avoids restarting the clock.
Perfect. Good catch. Thank you, Joe.
What I was going to say is just so people watching know, it's not that we don't care about all 21 items. We've all read about 600 pages on them. So I think, yeah, just, we're not trying to be picky. We've done a lot of reading on it, so.
No, fair enough. So I will open the floor to questions. Whoever wants to jump in and begin the ball rolling.
Let me find my question again. I have one related to accessory dwelling units, but now, hold on. So it was on the memorandum. It was item 17, no, that's not it. Item 11, the accessory dwelling regulations to conform with state statute to allow them as an outright permitted use, whether interior to an existing home, attached to an existing home, or within a detached structure on the same lot. So we're making that change because basically just to conform with state law, not because that's already what state law is, right?
Right.
Okay.
And so really the only change that we had to make to our code is the fact that we previously required detached accessory dwelling units in a rear yard to be by conditional use permit, and that's prohibited now. They have to be outright permitted.
Even detached ones?
Yes.
Outright permitted in R1?
Yeah, otherwise, many cities are changing their standards to make them considerably easier to be approved. Like, we require one extra parking space. They recommend that you don't, because it makes it more difficult in some locations where it's tight to fit in another parking space. We didn't change our standards.
Okay.
We could have, but we chose not to, but we did make them all outright permitted now.
So they're outright permitted use, but we can still have other requirements surrounding them?
They can't be larger than 800 square feet. They have to match the appearance of the primary structure that's on the property.
I thought it was 700 square feet.
That's 800.
It is. Yeah, so the safe bet here is to say we just want to follow state statute.
Yep.
As far as the ADUs are concerned.
Yeah, but I was interested in, like, there are other things that we can require of them to, okay.
Yeah. There's fewer things than the standards we currently have or additional standards we could add to. That we were trying to do something simple and easy just to get, so we're in conformance.
Sure.
Brian, sorry, on the ADU piece, we've not had many ADUs come through.
We actually had about 3, maybe 4 in the past 2 years.
Okay.
And they don't come on up to the council. The planning commission handles them. But we've had one over a garage, two over an existing detached building in their rear yards where they built on the second story, which are, they have to be careful they don't exceed the height requirements.
Gotcha.
They just generally are becoming more and more popular regionally.
Yeah.
So better to be prepared for what that looks like than, yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, and I guess, and that kind of goes back to our conversation last night of when we look at the housing needs assessment or that document, and it's, you know, when we look at those as potential toolkit items of accessory dwellings, and what does that look like for us in Canby? That's why it's, I'm surprised we haven't had more, but if it's, we might start to see that. Does this change in language make it harder or easier for those to come about?
Only those that are detached, it's now easier. They're much more certain now that there's always been a question when you have a conditional use permit, whether it will be approved or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Partitions, changing those from type 3 to type 2. The $250 fee to appeal that. I was maybe a little bit confused in here. Is that fee going to exist, or is that fee going to be waived?
The
if a neighbor-
$250 fee was changed on July 1st of 2019 because in our discussion of all of this, we're not the only community. We found out state statute had been changed and limited the appeal fee of a planning director decision, an administrative decision, to no more than $250. Ours used to be $1,600. And so it was recently, legislation changed that. So we're now conforming with state statute that if you make an administrative staff level decision, anybody should be able to appeal that, and the fee would be $250. Now with our proposal to change partitions, not only get rid of major and minor distinction, because we seem to be the only community that really has that. We can't find anybody else that does that. And we also wanted to see it potentially go to an administrative decision. You still do the exact same review with the exact same standards and a report to document that with the findings, and you send out notice, and you have the potential for an appeal. The Planning Commission recommended very strongly that they did not support that unless there was no appeal fee. So there's the distinction with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Staff thought it was, having lowered it to $250, that was a reasonable fee for someone that did not like the planning director's decision to appeal it and get it to the Planning Commission and do the process through the normal appeal process.
Now, as you recall from our conversations when we did our fee resolution this year, we did lower it to $250, and if the appeal is sustained, then that $250 is refunded.
It's my only fear on it, and I just think worst case scenario is if we don't give the public an opportunity to give their input on a partition, and $250, while it might not seem like a large fee, is a lot of money to some people. And if a neighboring lot to them is divided into 4 lots, they now have 4 other homes next to them they have to, deal with. And if they don't have the $250 to appeal it, and they didn't also get the opportunity to give their input on it, that's my only fear about having that fee. So I guess I maybe agree with the Planning Commission
That's
on
pretty
that.
much what the Planning Commission's thoughts were, although we did point out again that we send notice. They're able to provide that notice to the planning director. I can consider it in making the final decision. And there is the opportunity for the planning director, if he feels uneasy about it, to have it go on to the Planning Commission.
So the difference would be that they would give their public testimony to you instead of in the public forum. So they still get the opportunity to speak to you about their...
Right. And then that will be on the record if they actually appeal. And by actually, this is just staff speaking, but using the normal process, then puts things on the record, and you have a basis for appeal, because usually you don't want to rehash everything when you appeal something. You want to specifically say, what aspect of the decision do you disagree with? And focus on that when you appeal it, instead of having to discuss all aspects of it.
Yeah,
And if they prevail, as you said, it's free. And it can potentially stop frivolous appeals when you've got some game in it. But if you're correct and get it overturned, you get your money back.
As long as there's an opportunity for them to give some input, and if you guys are opening your office up to be able to take that input and
Well, the
that it
appeal
makes-
goes up,
yeah.
if there's an appeal of a planning director's decision, it will go up to the planning commission.
Sure,
for
but
a
I'm
hearing.
talking prior to the decision being made, if there's public, ability to give their opinions,
Yeah,
to the
Yeah.
planning director or planning staff prior to the decision being made, then I'm comfortable with it.
Brian, you talked about one of these changes affecting just one piece of property. Was that the designation K?
That's the comprehensive plan amendment rather than the code amendment, yes. And so we've
And
included.
which property is that?
It was the southeast 13th Avenue and the intersection of South Ivy.
And the impact of that property will be?
The change will mean now that the comprehensive plan, land use plan map is going to be amended. Instead of saying this is an appropriate area to encourage rezoning to the CR zone, it's now going to say this is an appropriate area to keep low-density residential by making this change, which is in accordance with the zoning that the property has.
Yeah, and to be clear, it doesn't change the actual underlying zoning. And that paragraph in the original text stated as such that the actual zoning was R1, and that the only reason it was an area of special interest, or the effect of it being an area of special interest, meant that at the time that it gets developed, they can ask for something different than R1, so that their rights aren't being changed because the underlying zoning has stayed the same. And I'm saying that for legal purposes.
Does that answer your question? Good, because I wanted to make sure I understood that legalese piece as well.
Well, as a general rule with staff, I like them to know who's going to be mad at me for the decisions that I'm making here. And it sounds like this is basically going to be stasis for that property. It's just going to eliminate that hassle that we ran into last time when somebody wanted to develop it and use the K overlay. I don't know if that's what the appropriate term we would use for it, but it returns to the base designation of R1.
Right.
And
Which is consistent with the neighbors, correct?
Right.
And they could always ask for an amendment themselves. I mean, even if you didn't have an area of special interest, you can always ask for a text amendment. Doesn't mean you're going to get it.
Right.
So they still actually technically have the same rights.
Right.
Just want to know what the incoming is going to be.
Okay.
Any other questions on what's being proposed this evening?
Mine were already asked and answered.
This was a huge first step.
Oh, I don't
Thanks,
disagree with
Brian.
that.
Thank you. It's huge.
I'm just surprised at 500 pages and we've had 3 questions this evening, so.
No, we didn't.
It got a
Not all
good
500
thrashing
were
in the
actually
planning commission.
necessary.
I do have one more
Yes,
question.
okay.
It's not super exciting, just for my clarification. Item 7, the eliminating the use of arbors as a way to build an 8-foot tall screening fence, right? That's when people take their 6-foot fence and they put 2 feet of arbor above it, right?
Right.
So people will be removing those, or they'll be out of
No,
a violation?
We aren't going to, we usually do not try to go and eliminate existing. We
Okay.
kind of grandfather them in.
Okay.
We changed our fencing ordinance about 11 years ago so that we don't allow 6-foot tall fences on the other street yard at a corner, an intersection of two streets, where you don't have a driveway, but you have a street frontage. You used to be able to put on the property line a 6-foot tall fence, but 11 years ago, we changed that so that you can see up and down both streets, even if it didn't have a driveway, so that the public realm, and it makes it easier for an adjacent property to back out, because you aren't blocking them with a 6-foot tall fence. People see those all over town, and they don't know why they can't do it now, because we made that change in the code. But it's so much more difficult to try to go back and eliminate all the existing, so we would
So
just
we're
be
going to allow
starting.
existing ones to stay in place
Yeah.
and then.
Yeah, it's just to, it's a big issue.
I was like, some people would be very upset if all of a sudden.
You know, and some towns don't regulate fence heights. Canby was pretty adamant, and has been, because we brought it up a few times just since I've been here in 10 years, that we don't want to wall off completely and make mini compounds out of each individual home, and you'd be surprised how many people want an 8-foot tall fence.
Okay. No, that's okay.
There's a lot in my neighborhood. I was just curious what it's going to look like.
All right. All right, so I will open the public hearing for testimony. I don't believe we have any proponents or opponents to any of the text changes. I'll pause. All right, I will close the public hearing. Any other questions or discussion items from this group here? Okay. We will get into our motion here shortly, and we'll capture the amended piece as well, by the sounds of it, yes? Okay. Great. Brian, thank you.
I wanted to mention to come back, if you make a motion for approval of this, the normal thing is to come back the next regular scheduled meeting for a second reading. We're going to need more time than that.
Okay.
Partly because we have staff on vacation, and we discovered that our changes in those 400 pages weren't done with, what do you call the word, the corrections. So we're going to have to type them all in again.
The track changes.
Yeah, the track
so that you would see them when
We
they
could
show
have
up.
pressed one button and said accept, but we can't do that.
So I will leave that between
Yeah, we'll,
you guys to figure out when.
Well, we need to announce it, so it would be September 6th. Is that enough time, Brian?
yeah,
The first meeting in September?
right.
Yeah.
September 4th.
So that's enough time, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
So
And
second
for some
reading,
reason, it's
September
not,
4th.
we can announce it and then we can move it out to the 18th.
Okay.
So that will, whoever makes the motion coming up will also have to say to come up for second reading on September 4th.
Okay.
It's 1514.
Appreciate it. Gotcha. Okay. All right. We'll move into resolutions and ordinances.
Okay. First up, let me find, I think I gave you my, can I see that? Perfect. We have Resolution 1324 authorizing the city administrator to execute a ground lease between the city of Canby and the Canby Fire District. And I see we have two Canby Fire District folks here, if you want to hear from them, as well as our city administrator.
Mr. Robinson.
I will present this on behalf of the city. Chief Davis had contacted us here several months ago with an inquiry relative to whether the city might have property available to site a north side emergency response station. We discussed a lot of possible locations. All of them had problems either for us or for fire. And we were able to come to an agreement on a site that I believe will work extremely well for Canby Fire, and it fits really well with our longer-term vision of how we're going to be managing our resources in the city as well. The proposal before you would cause the city of Canby and Canby Fire to enter into a 50-year lease, and basically a no-cost lease. The value to the city is that the residents on the north side of the tracks would have access to a quicker emergency response. And obviously the value to fire is that they would have a station that they could really put their resources in developing the physical plant rather than having to buy property as well. The property that we're proposing for lease is just immediately to the south of our Public Works yard. So if you drive down Redwood Street, cross Territorial, and keep going, when you hit the fence, that's the starting point for a Public Works and wastewater facility. If you look to the right, you're looking at the property. It would be 300 feet long and 145 feet wide. The question had been asked whether that actually would encroach on the sister's property, and that property that had been perhaps earmarked as a dog park, and the answer to that is no, it's not even anywhere close. The dog park property has always been identified, if constructed, to be on Territorial Road and fully on the sister's property. And what we've done here is we've been able to carve out a niche that works well for Canby Fire, and it actually works well in a different context that you'll hear probably sometime after I'm gone, in a relationship that we're working with on with Canby Utility for a future water treatment system on the opposite side of the road, so immediately opposite where we're looking at the relationship with Canby Fire. This gives us, Canby Fire, a great opportunity to put an emergency response station in, and to be able to expand it as necessary if they decide to put, fire trucks in there, and if they want to staff more than two people to sleep there, that they have enough room to do it. It's 1 acre is the space. We're currently in final phases of the survey, and expect to have that at any time. I have provided to you in the material that I've sent you a map that kind of shows within the context of the property that the city owns where this particular property lies. This property the city has owned for many, many years, and it just seems like a perfect fit and supporting an ongoing positive relationship between Canby Fire and the city.
Great. Excited for that piece. Thank you, Rick. Questions, comments? Great. I'll take a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 1324, a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute a ground lease between the City of Canby and Canby Fire District.
Motion's been made by Councilor Hensley and seconded by Councilor Varway to approve Resolution 1324, authorizing the city administrator to execute a ground lease between the City of Canby and Canby Fire District. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0.
I would also note that Canby Fire Board has also approved the lease, so all we need to do is execute it, get the survey completed, and they'll be going to work.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
Next up, you have ordinance 1514, amending Canby's comprehensive plan and Title 16 of the Canby Municipal Code. And if you want to have the further amendment language concerning the state definitions of residential care facilities and there being a conditional use in R1 zoning.
Perfect. We'll rewind really quick for Councilor Spoon's question.
I just had a follow-up question for maybe Chief and the viewers at home. If both sides have agreed to the lease and we execute it, when would someone expect to have that north side station operable.
Yeah, great question. Hi, Chief.
Good evening.
Hey, Chief.
And thank you, too, for approving the resolution. I want to thank the city administrator for working so closely, and also Jerry Nelzine down at the Public Works site has been outstanding to work with. So we very much appreciate it. Our goal right now, our huge priority is the remodel of the main fire station, which we're currently in the process of getting the plans, moving on that, and then working on the survey, as well as the submittal to the city with the plan of putting in a temporary facility, a modular home, residential, very nice residential type house with a two-bay garage, so it looked very much residential. What the voters had approved was actually just putting in an EMS station out there. We hope to put students out there with the paid paramedics as well. And that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of February start date, February, March.
Wow, awesome, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Chief.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that was okay. So, sorry, we'll go back down. So we're on to ordinance 1514, amending Canby's comprehensive plan and Title 16 of the Canby Municipal Code, which we had a public hearing on just moments ago. So if there's any other comments or questions, I'll take a motion to address that.
Joe?
Yes.
I'm looking at the recommended motion on page 21 of the packet. Does it need to specifically include Title 16 of the CMC, or is that covered?
Well, I would say that it needs to, the chapter, regarding Chapter 16 of the Canby Municipal Code.
So I'll just add that right in after the...
Correct.
Okay.
And then the additional language of the amended.
You bet.
Okay.
Okay, so listen and see if I do it right. Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 1514, amending Canby's comprehensive plan and text amendment 19-01 and Title 16 of Canby Municipal Code, subject to the findings and final order of the Planning Commission, utilizing the revised text amendment language provided by staff, which is attached to the July 8th supplemental memorandum to the Planning Commission, and with the further amendments of state definitions of residential care facilities, along with there being either an outright or conditional use in R1 zoning, to come up for second reading on September 4th.
That's a nice job. Hopefully the mayor can reiterate that.
Second.
We'll get you.
Thank you. All right, so motion's been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Spoon to approve ordinance 1514, amending Canby's comprehensive plan and comprehensive plan and text amendment 19-01 and what? Sorry.
And Title 16 of CMC.
Thank you. And Title 16 of the Canby Municipal Code, subject to the findings and final order of the Planning Commission, utilizing the revised text amendment language provided by staff, which is attached to the July 8th supplemental memorandum to the Planning Commission, with further amendments of state definitions of residential care facilities, along with there being a conditional use in R1 zoning, and to come up for a second reading on September 4th.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Any further discussion or comments?
I think we need that one to death.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0.
Okay, next up you have ordinance 1515. This is authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Kieran McLeod Incorporated, consulting engineers for design and construction phase engineering services for the 2019 wastewater treatment plant primary clarifier improvements.
Yes, for those of you who are interested, a primary clarifier is an installation or a wastewater treatment plant that first handles the effluent flowing into the plant, and what it's designed to do is separate the liquids and the solids. And from that point, the solids are moved into another area where ultimately they're transported out. The liquids are further treated before being finally 1992 master plan identified a need for a second primary clarifier when our population reached 15,000. We were able to push that out a little bit because the per capita flow was less than anticipated in 1992. We have low flow restrooms, and we're a little bit more cautious with how we use water, so we were able to set that back. However, this is still a project that has been identified in our wastewater capital improvement plan. What you have before you today is an agreement with Kerr and McLeod in an total amount of $130,000, broken down as follows. The design component was $86,000, construction engineering an additional $44,000. The estimated project cost is $1,365,000, and and this is a good opportunity for the city to stay ahead of demand. And the second primary clarifier also creates an opportunity when we have a problem with our single primary clarifier to redirect the effluent so that we don't have a backup and we don't have any risk or lessen the risk of spills, lessen the risk of mishandling the waste that we're managing at the wastewater treatment. So it gives us a redundancy that we really need as we grow larger as a city.
Great.
Staff recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, sir. Any clarifying questions or comments for Ms. Robinson?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve ordinance 1515, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Kerr and McLeod Incorporated Consulting Engineers for design and construction phase engineering services for the 2019 wastewater treatment plant primary clarifier improvements.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Councilor Spoon and seconded by Councilor Verwig to approve ordinance 1515, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Kerr and McLeod Incorporated Consulting Engineers for design and construction phase engineering services for the 2019 wastewater treatment plant primary clarifier improvements. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
And this will come back to you on the 21st for a second reading.
Thank you, sir.
Who seconded that?
Councilor Varwig did.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Next up, you have ordinance 1516, and this is following the matter that you heard, the annexation at the public hearing. This is proclaiming annexation into the city of Canby, Oregon, all remaining portions of Southeast Township Road, public right-of-way, roughly 2.4 acres, located between the western boundary of the Malala Forest Road and the western boundary of Malina Road, and including the portion of right-of-way that crosses the Union Pacific Railroad.
Perfect, thank you.
And there is just a little more specificity in the actual motion.
So Joe, regarding the motion piece, do you want the one read off that's in the packet or off the page here?
I think the one off the page works on the ordinance itself if you want.
On the ordinance, but not on the agenda.
Oh, on page 507 of 566, the ordinance itself could be read, the title. I can provide it.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 1516, ordinance proclaiming annexation into the city of Canby, Oregon, all remaining portions of Southeast Township Road, public right-of-way, roughly 2.4 acres, located between the western boundary of the Malala Forest Road and the western boundary of Malina Road, including the portion of road that crosses Union Pacific Railroad, DOT 760205P, MP 748.30.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Councilor Hensley and seconded by Councilor Spoon to approve ordinance number 1516, an ordinance proclaiming annexation into the city of Canby, Oregon, all remaining portions of Southeast Township Road, public right-of-way, roughly 2.4 acres, located between the western boundary of the Malala Forest Road and the western boundary of Malina Road, including the portion of right-of-way that crosses Union Pacific Railroad crossing Department of Transportation 760-205P and MP 748.30. Any further discussion or comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carries 6-0.
Next up, you have ordinance 1517. This is authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Owen Equipment for the purchase of one 2019 Elgin Crosswind 1 street sweeper for the City of Canby Public Works Department.
Yes, we have budgeted in the 2019-20 the acquisition of a new street sweeper. As staff report indicates, the street sweeper that we would propose to trade in is a 1996 sweeper. This is, by the way, on page 509 of your packet. The cost of the sweeper is $281,751. With a $2,500 trade-in for our 1996 sweeper, the net cost is $279,251. This is, I think we've pushed our old sweeper about as far as we can, and Public Works has worked with our fleet management to make sure that this is the right sweeper. We're using a Sourcewell contract, which is through the state contract, and staff recommendation is to approve the purchase.
So Rick, as I'm reading that, 23 years old with only 27,000 miles, I mean, that's not a lot of miles.
I knew that I was going to hear that from somebody.
I mean, hey, tell me that this is just
27,000
other
miles
addition-
at 2 miles an hour.
Yeah, should we count the number of rotations on the bristles that
If you
that
count the
swept our
hours, I think
streets? Yeah.
8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year.
Well, and I think that's a key indication here is that we have two street sweepers.
Yeah.
And they both run every day, or 5 days a week at least, through Canby. And so when we think about how much that entails for a 3 miles by 3 mile city, and people want to know when their streets are going to get cleaned, well, we're running them 5 days a week. We'll get there, but, and they are not cheap, that's for sure, so. All right.
I've got the motion.
Thank you, sir.
I move to approve ordinance number 1517, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Owen Equipment for the purchase of one 2019 Elgin Crosswind 1 street sweeper for the Canby Public Works Department.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made by Counselor Varwig and seconded by Counselor Hensley to approve ordinance number 1517, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Owen Equipment for the purchase of one 2019 Elgin Crosswind 1 street sweeper for the Canby Public Works Department. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0.
Next up, you have ordinance 1518, and this is a long-winded one. It's establishing a budget of $475,000 for the construction of a splash pad and related improvements, and authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with 2KG Contractors Incorporated for design and construction of a splash pad and related improvements, and authorizing the city administrator to approve change orders within the established budget, and to sign those other documents required for the completion of the project. And then there's also a declaration of an emergency.
Okay.
We are asking for, I'll answer the question first. This-
An emergency splash pad.
This is on page 517 of your packet. We are working very diligently to have the splash pad open by Memorial Day. And in order to, without the emergency declaration, we would be working in inclement weather about the same time as we got through the 30-day waiting period. So we are asking for an emergency declaration so that we can initiate the work on this and have a better opportunity to have that Memorial Day opening and hopefully see a lot of smiling faces on as we celebrate this pretty historic event in Canby's community. In our 2019-20 budget, we established a $400,000 budget for a splash pad. When we did the request for proposals, we had a suggested limit of $250,000, which, as we reviewed the 3 proposals that we saw, we could have gotten a splash pad for $250,000, but it really didn't meet any of the vision that any of us had for what a splash pad should be. We were particularly excited about the proposal that we received from the team that put together the 2 kg proposal, because it took into consideration Canby's philosophy as the garden spot. And the recommended option that is in the packet, and you've seen the detail on that, does have a lot of spray features that are plant-related looking types of spray devices, and it has a lot of interactive detail as well. So it goes above the $250,000, but it is money well spent, because what we get for it is something that Canby can be proud of, and the splash pad itself still stays under the $400,000. I'm asking for $475,000, and I'm asking for $475,000 because that's the limit that I can ask for within the context of a contract. You're allowed a certain percentage over the contract amount. What we intend to do is work with the contractor, hopefully successfully negotiating a revision to the scope of the contract. Our plan is to remove the tennis court that's all cracked and has almost but not quite dangerous. It's just a difficult area to play in. Remove that and place the splash pad just immediately to the north of the children's play area. And between the children's dry play area and the children's splash pad, we want to construct covered seating area, so that parents can sit down with their kids, and the kids can run between dry play area and splash pad play area, and the parents will, can have their lunches with them, and they can just be visiting with one another. When softball tournaments are being played, it gives us more covered area for people to come in and relax, get out of the heat, and we just think that it will make for a much more complete model. That does leave open for us a really kind of an ideal spot to reconstruct the tennis court, probably during the 2021-22 fiscal year, because we wouldn't finish this one till the end of 1920. So we're probably looking at 21-22 to reconstruct a new tennis court, and probably add pickleball and some other features to it that would make it more the current type of use that we're seeing people use on flat surfaces. So that's the vision for this project. It moved a little bit beyond what we had originally anticipated. We were just going to build a kind of a water park theme thing, but we just think we have an opportunity to do something special in Canby. We've also identified an opportunity, and working with our Parks crew and Public Works crew already, to expand the parking lot without doing a curb cut onto Maple Street. And so we're working on the detail on that. We'll be engineering that. That won't be part of this project, but it will be something that you're likely to see sometime in the winter, late winter, early spring. And it may be something that we incorporate into that my successor incorporates into the 2021 budget as a resurfacing job, and the Public Works one is willing to build the subsurface, bring rock in, make sure we have a proper drainage system set up, dry wells as necessary, but then we'd come in with the asphalt overlay and tie it into our existing parking lot on the north side of Maple Street Park. As all of you know, we have 2 parking lots at Maple Street. We have the one on the south side, right just behind the children's play area and basketball courts, and then we have one on the north side that's just right in front of what now is a tennis court. So the parking lot would stay, but we have an opportunity to expand beyond that and accommodate. What we're trying to do is find a way to not have park users taking up all the parking places in front of the houses on the street, because it just gets to be a more popular park. We want to make sure we're able to accommodate the need in a practical, reasonable way. So that's, I apologize for the long-windedness, but we've kind of modified this plan as we went along so that we could take full advantage of the opportunity that we have. We get one shot at doing a really special splash pad, and I just want to make sure that it's really special.
Rick, the proposals that we've seen are just kind of from the contractor was just kind of their bid, correct? It's not their final design.
No, you'll actually see the again, the same thing that happened with the Grant Street Arch. They'll do a couple design concepts out, and they'll start with option 3, because that's how we set the bid, and then that cost will actually move down or move up just a little bit depending on what you add or subtract as far as the design. What we do know is that splash pads have to be circular. We pretty much are limited on the total size of the splash pad. They're going to be concrete. They're going to have a non-slip, it's basically a broom finish, but it'll be concrete, and then have the different elements in the splash pad itself. So it's really the elements that you'll be looking at and trying to determine how best to make this installation as fun as possible for the kids that are going to be using it.
It has to be circular, you said? Or it has to be circular, or that's the design?
In order to really take advantage of the flow, when you get square, you can't get water out to the corners, and,
Gotcha.
and you know, kids run in circles.
It's not a
they don't run in
requirement, it's a
squares, and-
suggestion.
yeah,
Should be.
It's just the.
And yeah, best practice, right? And we'll include the public like we did tonight with the thing. As you might know, there's this web page called Facebook, and there's a page on there that people give their opinions on sometimes. And on occasion, and I will just say I've read some opinions on what people have seen on so far, and some people might be a little underwhelmed. So I just want to make sure that the public will get their input on the splash pad, and it's not just 3 trees that sprinkle. So
No, and as a matter of fact, and that's why we ended up with the proposal that we did, because the others, I don't know even how to say this without, the others did not express the creativity that this proposal that I'm suggesting to you.
Oh, we'll miss your diplomacy.
And that's why we went to this one, because, by any definition, this was a creative, fun, it's more colorful, there's more opportunity for interaction with the water.
And it included water.
Yeah. And you could go, and it's a very interesting discussion. I mean, you could go more or you can go less, and you'll have an opportunity to pick from the different design concepts. And if you want to move completely away from the garden spot theme, you have an opportunity to do that as well. Just that one had so much color and so much variety, and created such opportunity for the kids to do things that it was the one that I think pretty much universally resonated as the most viable, and I think probably the only one that really captured my imagination.
I tried to calm some fears by telling people they would have an opportunity for input, so I wanted to make sure I could.
That's actually built into the RFP.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that I could follow up on that. So.
Yeah, no, that's actually built into the RFP as the requirement.
Thanks, Rick. I'm really excited. When my kids were younger, I had to take them to other communities to enjoy splash pads, and I'm really excited for the families that are here now and the families of the future that they'll have one in our city. I'm excited.
Yeah, it is fun.
I'll make them. Oh, go ahead.
We're working now, I'll take this, we have a little bit of time, one step further. In our 5-year capital improvement plan, we actually have programmed improvements to 10th Avenue between Pine and Locust in the 1920 and 2021 budget year, and from Locust to 4th. So what we wanted to do is do our best to have good walking area for everybody. So if someone comes downtown and they want to walk into the park, or if they're dropped off and I think we may have an opportunity. I know that some of you expressed concern about making sure the whole community had access with some of the additional transit money that is coming in. There might be an opportunity for a fixed route intra-city
Yes.
route, and maybe it's 6 months out of the year and it stops there as well. I just think that there's some great opportunities to really create something real positive.
Awesome. I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
I move to approve ordinance 1518, an ordinance establishing a budget of $475,000 for the construction of a splash pad and related improvements, and authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with 2KG Contractors Incorporated for design and construction of a splash pad and related improvements, and authorizing the city administrator to approve change orders within the established budget and to sign those other documents required for the completion of the project and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Councilor Spoon and seconded by Councilor Varwig to approve ordinance 1518, an ordinance establishing a budget of $475,000 for the construction of a splash pad and related improvements, and authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with 2KG Contractors Incorporated for design and construction of a splash pad and related improvements, and authorizing the city administrator to approve change orders within the established budget and to sign those other documents required for the completion of the project and declaring an emergency. Any further discussion or comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0.
And your final ordinance of the night is 1519. It's authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Landscape Structures Incorporated in the amount of $81,905, and also is declaring an emergency.
Again, the emergency declaration requested here is to provide enough time for the contractor to complete the installation of the new all-weather surface at Legacy Park. Absent the declaration, we would be left with the old surface until late spring, or the time when we end up in a dry period. So that's the request here. And I know it seems like we're throwing all of these emergency declarations. We can't really do anything until we have a budget. And then once we have a budget, every department is in just a really big hurry to get their project done. So we do the best we can to accommodate them, but sometimes it takes a while for me to get to them.
It does seem we have more emergency clauses in August than any other time of the year.
I know.
And it seems to be around things that are outdoor related.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all weather
Yeah,
sensitive.
paving or whatever, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the Parks budget did include a budget to replace the all-weather surface at Legacy Park. We received 2 proposals. The low proposal from Landscape Structures Incorporated was $81,905. Jeff Snyder has looked at the materials proposed to be used by Landscape Structures, Inc., and has shown it to me as well. It looks like excellent material. As I recall, this one is a poured-in-place all-weather surface, rubberized surface. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Kind of neat. So the requested amount is $81,905, and this is brought to you for first reading with the second reading on August 21st, if approved this evening.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Councilor Parker.
First, Rick, let me thank the staff, and actually it goes back to Kim Schaefer of coming up with electronic pads to save us at least 7,000 pages.
Yeah, ream a piece tonight.
But unfortunately, we've found here that once you get past page 500, it crashes.
Crash and burn.
So I was not able to pull up for reference, but on this particular item, I did not see a warranty. If this material does not make it past the first season, are we just out of luck? Do we have to sue? Is there in fact a warranty for this product?
I don't know. That's a very valid question.
So much for your emergency clause.
Well, when you buy a manufactured good, it's going to have a certain warranty that goes with a brand new product, but it doesn't denote what it is. So
Should we know that before we buy it?
It's probably,
What's your professional advice to protect us against a product that may be defective or fail?
let me do this. Let me, in the interim between now and August 21st, make sure that I look up this particular product's warranty, its manufacturing warranty, and make sure that you have that information before you do second reading.
To be contingent on a warranty.
Yeah, we, in the 9 years I've been on the council, I'm not aware, with the lone exception of a sewage separator, but and even that was a huge hassle, trying to sort that out.
Yeah.
I did see in our splash pad, we've got a 25-year warranty. It looks like a terrific thing. I just want to protect the city. That if this thing doesn't even last one season,
Yeah.
if we have to start from scratch in terms of a tort claim or that sort of thing, that it just seems reasonable to have some sort of a warranty that it makes it past the first season.
And
It's a great catch.
I think
Fair
that's
enough.
a very responsible.
I'm looking at at their quote, and so I'll teach you a trick. I learned how to get to past page 500. I'll show you. According to their invoice that they show, they don't mention any kind of warranty in their invoice. So maybe that's something, if in our motion, should we add based on?
Yeah, we're going to add
yeah.
the conditional piece of the warranty information for next meeting, so that if it's not suitable, then we can just walk it back.
Well, and I'm just thinking about our new administrator of saying, congratulations, we've got a failure on a product that we bought before you were here, now go fix this.
Yeah.
So it just seems like, given, especially that splash pad warranty, if you took a look at that, that was really protected the city. So this is much less, $80,000, but still.
It's 80 grand. Want to take a stab at it there, Council President?
Sure. Let's try this, Joe. I move to approve Ordinance 1519, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Landscape Structures, Inc. in the amount of $81,905 and declaring an emergency, subject to warranty satisfactory to the city administrator and city attorney.
I like it. Thank you.
work?
Yeah.
All right.
Motion's been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Berge to approve Ordinance 1519, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Landscape Structures Incorporated in the amount of $81,905 and declaring an emergency, providing
Speech to text.
warranty.
Subject to a warranty satisfactory to the city administrator and city attorney.
Yes, what he just said. Subject to a satisfactory warranty.
He got it. Subject to a warranty satisfactory to the city administrator and city attorney.
Perfect.
I think it's
That was
said
a
in the
good
record
catch.
enough.
Good. Any further discussion or comments on this particular item?
No, I like that catch, Councilor Parker.
That was
Yes.
good. That was righteous.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0. We have no new business. Any city administrator business and staff reports?
No.
Nope.
No. Second opportunity for citizen input. Ryan Brown or Carol? No, all the citizens have left. Joe, action review.
Okay, so tonight you've approved the consent agenda. You've adopted Resolution 1324. You've approved Ordinance 1514 with further amendments to come up for second reading on September 4th, 2019. You've approved Ordinance 1515 to come up for second reading on August 21st of this year. You've approved Ordinance 1516 to come up for second reading also on August 21st of this year. You've approved Ordinance 1517 to come up for second reading on August 21st. You've approved Ordinance 1518 to come up for second reading on August 21st. And finally, you've approved Ordinance 1519 to come up with language subjecting the satisfactory warranty language to come up for second reading on August 21st. And there is no executive session tonight.
Thank you, Joe.
Great, in anticipation.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Yes. I will take a motion to adjourn. In a second.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. All right. We are adjourned. Canby, good night, and thank you.